Now, a quick introduction to the project, if you will. As you guys all know, I played my very first Pokemon game when I was like 27 years old. I wasn't a kid because my mom didn't let me play Pokemon when I was little because she thought it was Satan. And while I was playing the game, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the Pokemon designs. I thought they were super fucking cute. I wanted like a billion of them. And then it was around that time that I was trying to experiment more with character design, and I had an idea. What if I take this Pokemon and I turn it into a monster girl in my own art style? Now, this project has a few rules that I tried my very, very best to stick with whenever I make a new one. The first rule is, always respect the silhouette. If you can't tell what the Pokemon is at a glance, I did it wrong. If you can't tell what the Pokemon is without it being in a specific pose though, I also did it wrong. The second rule is, respect the shape and respect the vibe, right? If they have weird stuff like no arms or silly faces or like fins and pointy bits and shit, I have to try and respect that to the best of my ability. That was my main design challenge with this project. I had to be able to do this enough so people can tell what Pokemon it's based on without the name or the actual Pokemon being on screen. Let me tell you guys that it has been a challenge thus far, but I think I have risen to the occasion. I already have Gen 1 under my belt, but unfortunately, the older designs need some work, so we can't do Gen 1 today. However, I finished Gen 2 recently, and I thought, what better way to show you guys a little bit into the method behind the madness than to actually show off the designs so you guys can see the Pokemon and then what I did and why. And I thought that would be more fun than just like, you know, putting everything on the Dropbox and being done with it. So with that in mind and those rules, let's go through Gen 2. Another key thing about this project that I forgot real quick, all of these are fantasy. I did not want these to be in a modern day setting at all. I wanted them to be fantastic because it's Monster Girls, and I also did not want to tie it to the actual Pokemon games. So for this gen, the main things to know is this is going to be fantasy, but it's going to be Fantasy Japan. Now, I do know, I am aware that a big chunk of the Pokemon regions are based off Japan. However, Johto is the one that has the strongest Japanese aesthetic, mainly because of the towers, the kimono girls, the music. For me, Gen 2, when I was sitting down to conceptualize what would this region look like in the Musu version, was I needed to be aggressively Japanese. This came with its very own share of challenges, which I will talk about as we go through the Pokemon, but that's the gist of it. Every Musu gen is fantasy, different regions, different aesthetics, but always fantasy. And with that, we can begin. Chikorita. I love this thing because it's basically a lima bean with eyes. That's it. Its smug aura mocks you. It's super cute. It's a teeny tiny little baby dinosaur with a fucking leaf on its head. Germinating seed. Super cute. Now, based off this little fucker, I made this. This is the Chikorita Pokemusu. It's the Leaf Pokemusu 152. I've given you guys a little like summary of the lore on the side if you guys want to read it. But what I wanted to do with this one, when I sat down to think about like, okay, what could I do with this bean? The first challenge presented itself in the form of, do I want to make a centaur or not? And I thought about it and my brain went, no, because Chikorita are super compressed. The second challenge was, what can I do with it? And one of the big things about it on the Dex is that their flower buds smell nice. So I was like, okay, let's make something like a Temple Maiden aesthetic, but not quite that like strict. I wanted it to be more playful. I wanted it to be a little bit cuter. So like it almost resembles an idol outfit in a way. But the main thing I wanted was to show off that these were like just happy, curious little beans that like work with scents, right? So when I was making the outfit, I opted to not go with the traditional red and white because red is such an aggressive color. And especially on a green creamture, I think it would have contrasted way too hard. So I went with like softer, earthier tones. I put their seeds on their hips besides their necks so they would be more noticeable. I made the leaf gigantic because I think that that would be like the very, very best way to show off that that's like the central part of the Musu. I also gave them dinosaur feet instead of normal feet because no centaur, but I do like the feet. Little tails. And for the most part, I kept the outfit fairly light on details. I just added some repetition on the forms of flower buds on the ribbons that are also the buds that are on her neck and her hips. So it's a balanced design overall. So this outfit is giving Temple Shrine Maiden, but a lot more casual than the ones that you would traditionally see in Japanese media because I wanted them to be a little bit more casual than actual Shrine Maidens. Next, we have Bayleef with a fucking can opener leaf on its forehead. It's super cute. The buds are bigger. The head is still empty. There's nothing in there. But it's a little bit more shapely. It's not a bean anymore. Based off that, I made this. The Bayleef Musu. These evolve from Chikorita if they are exceptionally brave and help out a lot of people. Now, when I was working with Bayleef, I noticed immediately that they had much softer colors than Chikorita. They went yellow as opposed to green, so I wanted to work with a little bit of a softer color scheme. Not so much earthy, a little bit pinker, a little bit more sweet. They still retain that like Shrine Maiden aesthetic, but it's a little bit more elaborate, right? We have a lot more hair accessories, fucking seeds everywhere. The buds on the hips and on the neck are a lot more present. I did not want to cover her hips because I wanted to show them, right? That's why the dress is open. I added some more ornamental, almost like blooming flower details to the whole outfit, and I also gave them those little paper fans that a lot of Shrine Maidens have. These are dead-ass healers. These can actually manipulate scents. With that in mind, I wanted to give them a very nice soft silhouette, but that was still a little bit more complicated than Chikorita's. I genuinely love how this one turned out, especially the colors. It's just so soft and soothing, and it looks like a fruit. Then we're going to the big mama jama of the Gen 2 starters, Meganium. Now, Meganium is actually a pretty cool design for a Mon, in the sense that it's basically a blooming flower, right? You have the petals around its neck, and then you have the antenna, which are kind of like the pistil. It's a really easy concept to work with. The good thing about these evolutions is that you just go, this one, but bigger. So based off knowing the fact that it's a little flowery dinosaur, I made this. The first thing I wanted with Meganium was to convey the fact that she's bigger. So I made her decently large. And all third evolution starters are big, but like with Meganium, I wanted mommy. These are like the uber healers. If you come to a Meganium and you have like a Noroi on your ass, you're cursed, you're sick, you're like coughing up blood, she will like wave her magic scent wand or whatever and you will feel all better. Color-wise, I stripped a lot of color off of this because I wanted to go for purity, for healing. So white is a very often color to use this. I needed it to be very, very crisp and very, very clean. And I also really wanted to show off the flowers around her neck and around her hips. I made the ones on her hips a part of her kimono. You will be seeing so many kimonos today, by the way. And I also wanted blooms to be a constant design element for this one. I no longer wanted to go with seeds because, again, this is just very, very bloom. So in order to not make the color design too harsh and to kind of like give off that healer vibe, I went with white for everything. A lot of like wrap bandage details, the paper fan details are in her hair now, and she's just supposed to be like a very nice, soothing presence. So I kept the pose very open and I kept the hair shapes very soft. So like the character's sense of flow would be more nurturing and a lot more friend-shaped than any other Musu in this evolution line. Kimono, so many. You guys are gonna be sick of them by the time that we're done, okay? I also added a little hood for her, which resembles the traditional wedding headdress in Japan. Again, because you can bond with all of these, that's part of the fun. But I wanted to kind of like be like, oh, mother, okay? It was genuinely like super fun to make the first line because it was like, oh, it's a tiny baby dinosaur and then it's big mama dinosaur, right? Usually with the starters, I tend to like show that progression from like normal woman to oh, uber milf, always. Let's move on to this bitch, Cyndaquil, indeed. Fire mouse dipshit. I love this thing because it looks hella anxious and it always spurts fire from its back. And I think that, you know what, me, based off that unhinged looking rat, I made this. So this is the Cyndaquil Musu. The main thing you guys will notice is body language. I wanted her nervous. I wanted this one to constantly look like she was losing her shit. So, fun fact about all of the fucking Firestarter lines, all these outfits are basically backless because they have like no control over flames, but this is the most dress that this one has. I wanted these to be low-key wannabe warrior, so there's a bit of a samurai aesthetic going on here. Plated armor, some poofy pants, but not a lot. Like, they're not big fighters, they're anxious, right? They run away from everything. I am really, really glad that it has such a like clean color scheme overall because I was able to preserve that like really, really like vivid green and use a lot of like earthy orange tones to show off that fire, but still contrast it with the hair really, really nicely. I did a lot of armor details for these. I don't know if you guys can tell. Just bandages, no shoes. Also has little weird feet. And for the most part, I just wanted her to look apprehensive and curled in on herself and like soft. She has the classic Japanese dot eyebrows, yes. We move on to Quilava, I believe. If I get any of these names wrong, no, I didn't. Quilava is more of like an evolved fire weasel. It seems more confident, it actually has ears, and the fire is coming out of its ass. It did the evolution thing of, oh, it stood up. That's it, but super cute. Now, this line of Musu has sexy armor. And the reason it has sexy armor, and I read into it on the desk, this is not magical or spiritual fire, this is dead-ass flames. So I was met with the design challenge of how the fuck do I make these wear anything? Because they would just set it on fire. So the solution for this one was simple, sexy armor. I wanted to show off that they burn everything, so I made the clothes singed on the back. Like, the back is falling off. Those underoos are hanging on for dear life, okay? The only parts of these outfits that are still alive is the plate armor because it's made out of metal. Because the rest of the clothes they have, they don't survive very long. They have much stronger fire than Cyndaquil, but the downside to that is the fact that everything they wear gets evaporated. They're much braver than Cyndaquil, so they will literally rush into battle. They just have more armor because it's like the only types of clothes they can wear. I kept it very fiery in the color scheme, but not as bright as the flames. I really did not want to fuck with the saturation for this, especially on the outfit. I wanted red, but I did not want bright asshole red because the fire already does that for me. Also, I needed the hair and face to be a standout. So I kept it more desaturated, but a lot less on the earthy side and more on like the actual, you know, red side. Very, very fun. You see a lot of ass with the Cyndaquil line, because again, they burn everything. It's actual fire. I managed to keep all the face patterns as well, and this one actually has ears. You'll notice quickly that if a Musu has patterns, I do try to add them. You can see these better in the concept art, for which I might bring some of these up, if need be. Lily, how much for fire resistance potions? Bruv, it's not worth it! It's not worth it! I mean, you could. Technically, you could. But I would save those potions for Typhlosion. Okay, so Typhlosion is whatever the fuck this is. What is it? I don't know what Typhlosion is. All I know is that it's standing upright, it has a hell of a lot of teeth, its neck is on fire, and it still respects the same patterns. It's pointy, it's intense. So I had to take that intensity into the actual Musu. Let's see how I did. When I say I made everyone in this gen, I mean it, mama. So Typhlosion, immediately at the onset, I was like, oh, she can't wear anything. Big design challenge was for her was making her armor that was like somewhat functional, but still looked cool. So I kind of threw the clothes out the window for this. They will melt anything. Their fire is so much more hotter than any of the other ones in this line. Their whole body can heat up and literally explode. Their sweat can explode. They're like Bakugo, all right? They sometimes coat the sword with it and go, "Nyeh."
Super Death Sword.
So I wanted to show their weapon because I want to kind of like show what they do with it. They're mercenaries, they're guards. So I wanted to give them armor that was way flashier. You will notice that I notched the saturation way up, and that I actually kept a lot of the intensity of the original Pokemon. I made headdress pointy, I made the fire really, really pointy, tail pointy. There's pointy shapes everywhere. There's a lot of chaos in this one, but I still think I managed to preserve a really decent sense of flow. I wanted to kind of rough around the edges. That's why I added chains. I added metal everywhere. Even at the fucking coochie, because if that fucking black bodysuit burns off, yeah, look at the chain details. It's not coming off. Constructing this outfit was basically look at that lickum. Constructing this outfit was basically an exercise in how do I make a chain bikini? Because like I was like, ooh, if she sets herself on fire, that like black bodysuit won't last at all. So I had to make an actual metal bikini. I actually had to think about the construction of this thing and how it would stay on her body.
Lord, give me strength, for I have mighty needs.
Again, you shouldn't do it. It's risky, but you know what? Fuck it. I also did manage to keep the patterns on the Musu as well. You can see them more with Typhlosion because she's more naked. So you can see the one on her face, the one on her hips. They have like their little tail on the back. And they also still have, very important, rat feet. Ears are a little bit hidden behind the hairdress, but they're still there. And I also really wanted to preserve the teeth. Very, very intense eye shape as well. I needed her to be like super strong and imposing and pointy. And I had a lot of fun with this line because the fucking design challenge of how do I make someone who can't wear clothes actually wear clothes was a definitely fun one. I hope you guys saved those potions of fire resistance though. We move on to Wator! Totodile. Dopey fuck. It's so happy. It's so pleased with itself. It's so blue. It will bite your dick off. These things have a bite force that's comparable to actual gators, and you can tell that they're super bitey because mama teeth. But the thing that I like about them is that they're pretty colorful. Like really, really, really colorful. And I really wanted to preserve that. And on that note, I did this with them. Totodile, I made them blue. When a Pokemon has like a really, really weird skin tone, I usually have the dilemma of should I preserve it, right? And for this one, I decided I wanted them to be blue because the aesthetic I wanted to go for was Oni. And these are like swamp puppies. These do hang around with people, but they usually muzzle themselves just in case. And I wanted to keep their outfits very wild. I did give them a swimsuit. and some leg pieces there, but I wanted to give them like the fur-lined cloth, a little baby cloth pauldron here, some armor elements here and there as well. And I wanted to like really play up the water motif, so I put water drops in strategic places on the outfit. I like to play with repetition when I design outfits that are a little bit more complex. You won't see me do a lot of bits and bops, but when I do, I tend to use repetition because it's like my favorite way to actually hammer home a design. So I repeated the fur lining on the top and on the bottom. I kept the color scheme more or less neutral. Mainly because the Pokemon's already so bright, I didn't want to overwhelm the viewer with a lot of really bright colors, so I kept it pretty earthy. I think earthy is the way to describe a lot of these starters, so they're very, very colorful. I went with like an almost like blue-gray for the base suit, and then I kept it in like tame gold to match the light yellow on her skin, and ochre reds to match the red in her hair, without actually drowning out the character. She also does have the pattern, but it's right on the booba, so it's not very, very, very noticeable. She looks like she bit me and she knows I'm mad. They do bite. They do muzzle themselves when they hang out with people. These are what we like to call medium threat levels. Give Gator head pass. They're very cute though. They do like humans. I wanted to preserve the feet, so a lot of these are gonna have super weird grippers. They only have 3 toes. Sorry, not sorry. There's gonna be like a very few sexy feet. So if you're into feet, this project might not be for you because they're all super weird. So this is how we start the water line for Totodile. Let's continue. So Croconaw is the second one. When I tell you guys that I hated designing some parts of this thing, because like holy shit, that pattern, Croconaws look like little cavemen. They're cute. They're a lot pointier. The jaw is a lot like whoa, bigger, more bitey, little bit more intense in design in general. Very cute. But let me show you guys the Musu and what design fucking challenges I had with this one. Croconaw. So I wanted this line of Musus to be strong. I didn't want them to just be round and soft because the Pokemon gets like progressively more fucking built as the line goes on. So you guys can't see it, but under those clothes in the concept art, you can see the actual egg pattern, like the caveman pattern on it. I hated that because I was like, how do I make this look good? Thankfully, I managed to make it pretty passable, but it gave me some trouble. Now, outfit-wise, I wanted to basically take the Totodile outfit and destroy it. These are loners. They live in swamps by themselves. They Shrek, okay? And they don't like humans as much. So I basically took the Totodile outfit and I fucking wrecked it, right? So instead of a shirt, I went with bandages. I took the fur lining from different parts of the outfit and I actually tied it around her neck, destroyed the gloves, destroyed the bottom part of like the suit as well, destroyed the foot pieces, and I wanted this to look a little bit wilder. I gave him a club also. Sometimes stuff like that will come up that I will use a similar outfit for an evolution, but that's because I want to show progression, right? So the same repetition elements are still there, but I decided that for this one in particular, I needed to show how much wilder they are in contrast to Totodile because they literally just be wilding it out there in the woods. The booba's only getting better. Like, when I was starting this project, a big part of what I was thinking about was I wanted to make sure that I was using body types that fit the Pokemon, right? This is a tanky build, so I wanted a tanky woman, if that makes sense, right? It's part of preserving the vibe. If I can't preserve the vibe through shape alone, I have to play with body shape, with muscular tone, height, anything I can do to make this look like the Pokemon at a glance, I will do it. But don't expect all of these to be boo-boolicious just because it's me. Feraligatr is insanely cool, although it looks rather unhinged. For Feraligatr, I had a lot of fun because this one is much like Typhlosion, a very intense Pokemon, right? It's super pointy, there's plate everywhere, there's so many teeth. But the thing about Feraligatr is that they seem chill, they seem fun. So when I was designing the Musu, I took that into account. And for that, I give you Big Swamp Mama. When I was working on Feraligatr, I thought to myself, we go bigger, we go home. I need her to be jacked. I need her to be an absolute fucking unit of a Pokemon, alright? And she won't be the only one. Feraligatr are a little bit more sophisticated than Croconaw. They're leaders, so they have more ornamentation. I gave them some dope headdresses with the same water like drop motif as all the other ones, but they look a lot more fancy. I gave back actual cloth. I didn't destroy the entirety of their outfit with some really cool, I wanted to do like dappled light on water, but since it's swampy, I went with like that yellow color because the yellow is still very much present in the entirety of the design. I gave them a lot more hair because I thought that would look really, really, really cool. And I gave them like much bigger leg wear. I wanted to show off kind of like their segments and their plates everywhere. Like their knees are super weird. So I really wanted to play up the intensity. And I also wanted to make the colors more rich, especially on the reds, because I toned down the saturation for her hair so I could make the reds in the outfit more vivid. The main thing I wanted with Feraligatr was to show off someone that was large, in charge, but had a really, really good nature. I wanted her to feel like someone that would be fun to drink with, and she will get sloshed with you, and you might lose that contest. So I think that out of all of these, so far, so good, right? The entirety of the fucking starters for Gen 2 was a joy to work through. They were all super fun and uniquely challenging in their own ways. I think that for me, Feraligatr is a standout because I was finally getting into my stride with approaching different body types. We're moving on. The starters are done. We keep it going. Oh, shit! That's rad! You know what else is rad? Gamer subs! Do you want energy? Do you want to be able to fight 20 people as one man? May I recommend trying out gamer subs? Yeah, fucking energy for days, baby. Laser focus, dodge, dodge, and you will exude pink fire if you get too excited. And it's pink because he used fucking code KinkyMation at checkout. 10% off, remember that. Ton of energy. And if you don't want energy because caffeine is spooky scary, they got you, baby boo. Caffeine-free flavors, sugar-free. Become a man. Be like a dragon. Be like Kiryu. Boom. Chill over. Sentret! This Pokemon is me! This thing is anxiety personified. It's an egg with rabbit ears and a tail. It's standing at attention. It looks so soft, so fluffy. Good luck catching one. They're super anxious. Knowing that, though, I decided to turn anxiety personified into a waifu. This! She's so soft and squishy. The main thing I needed for them, right? I wanted to really play up on them being lookouts. Because in their decks, they're lookouts. They're incredibly fucking anxious. They're always on the lookout for anything together. So when I was designing the outfit, I was like, I can't do a normal kimono for this. That would not work. So there's other Japanese outfits that have like little baby shorts and like the rolled up sleeves and shit. So I went with that, right? Again, I kept the colors fairly simple. These are peasants. They're not like royalty or anything like that. They have their calling conch. Look, look, look. They have their conch to call if there's danger, but usually they scream so loud people hear them anyway. I also gave them their arm flappies so they could do the same thing that the actual Sentret does. They don't fly, but they kind of look like flying squirrels. I didn't want to neglect that. So they do have their arm flappies that they like pull up with their kimonos. Very simple leg wear. And the straw hat for when it's really, really sunny out. Cute little baby shorts. And the standout had to be their tails. It had to be, and this made designing their body quite tricky, it had to be really big. The tail had to be much bigger, almost as long as they are, because it needed to support their weight. So when I was drawing it, I was like, I need this to be huge. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. And I really, really like the peasant vibe I gave them with like their little kala conch. I did some really basic accents here, just in red, because it's like one of the most commonly used colors in like old school Japanese outfits. Does she have 2 sets of ears? No, all of these are pure monster girls. She has just the rabbit ones and that's it. And fun fact, they're almost always seen in pairs. Furret! Long fuck. Furret is so cute. It's one of those Pokemon that you see it and you immediately go, ah! I found them to be very, very charming to work with because they're just like a long slinky of a thing that has like just rings on it and like cute little mustache and that's it. I've seen the memes, by the way. And based on the fact that they're diggers and they like to make tunnels for fun, they're like weasels, I decided to play into that when I actually designed the Musu and I made this. So, funny thing to know about Furret, body language-wise, is that they don't like to stand up straight, ever. They prefer to either flat fuck on the ground or move around on all fours like a fucking goblin out of a horror movie. I wanted them to work with like their tunnel system, so they like to dig around. They like to dig up things. They're like almost like miners, right? And one of the things that I was dealing with when I was designing this character was like, ah, fuck, there's no mining hats in old-timey fantasy Japan. But then I looked it up, and what they used to do was we used to have a headdress with fucking candles tied to it. And I thought that was so fucking funny, I decided to give them one. So they also have a very simple outfit, same color scheme as Sentret, but they don't cover as much skin. They spend so much time underground digging holes and just like using their equipment that like they don't want to like get outfits dirty. So their outfit is actually insanely simple. It's one of the most modern looking ones that there are in this gen, but I still think I managed through the use of other elements to keep it fantasy. with the headdress, bandages, the foot coverings, and just a lot of like old-timey fantasy tools. I do think I managed to convey the old-timey fantasy Japan, even though the outfit is a lot more modern. Standout is also the tail. I needed it to be insanely long. And fun fact, in the concept art, I think I drew one being like a flat fuck just for shits and giggles. The reason their tools are so tiny, I'm glad that you ask, is because they use those up to dig up precious stones. They actually dig with their hands. They will literally go ba 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 like a dog at a park and make holes and hide in and out of them and mess with people for fun. So like Furret, they look super cute, but they're kind of dipshits. A little bit. Also very flat-chested. I was like, this cannot be boobulicious. This has to be a more flat, petite, long body type because otherwise it would not work. Owl! Hoothoot. I love Hoothoot. For the longest time, I had the misconception that they only have one foot, but no, they have two. This design is perfection in its simplicity. Clockwork hands for eyebrows, big eyelashes, foot, round, friend shape. That's it. Owl baby. I love the owl baby. And I especially like what I came up with for the Musu. Isn't it cute? I wanted to make like an astrologer, like time sorcerer, right? So everything about the outfit points back to a clock. This hat, fun fact, is very common of like Japanese sorcerers of Eld. A lot of people who like was like temple priests and shit wore shit like this, but I had a lot of fun designing this outfit because I wanted to put clock elements everywhere. So there's a lot of like clock hands. I also made her eyes red because yes, it's off-putting. No, I don't care. The Pokemon has red eyes. I need to make her look as weird as possible. This one's also a harpy, no arms. So most of the work they do with their legs. But I want you guys to pay close attention to the outfit because I am especially smug about my use of repetition for this one, okay? I used clock arrows for everything, from the top of the hat to the skirt to the actual staff she's carrying around. It looks like a watch hand, and that's on purpose. I also put her eyelashes / cogs in different points of the outfit so I could tie the eye patterns together with the rest of the vibe for the look, for the Musu, right? And since most of the work that this thing does is with its feet, I wanted the leg that was up because I needed to have her standing on one leg. It fits the actual silhouette of the fucking Pokemon to be just holding tools. The wings are also fairly small for a harpy. I don't think that this Musu could fly. I don't remember if I specifically wrote that down in the concept, but I don't think it can. And also, you can't really see it. The back of the hat is also an arrow. So yeah, Hoot I'm very, very happy with. I went with really dark muted colors because owl nighttime. But other than that, I'm just really, really happy with the amount of cool repetition and theme I managed to come up with for this one. Then we have Noctowl, right? This is Wilson's Mon. So Noctowl are funny because they lose that like ability to tell time, but they gain a lot more speed and agility. I really like this because it's just like an angry owl. It's just like a horned owl, that's it. They're like, it's not a Pokemon, it's an animal. This is just an owl. But knowing that, I give you the first ninja of the series. So when I was looking at Noctowl, there's a problem with Gen 2 that Wilson and I like to call Pokemon that just likes to hang out. Some Pokemon don't do anything. I love it when the Dex gives me fucking shit to work with, but for the most part, some Pokemon don't fucking do shit, okay? They're just lounging around. So for Noctowl, I was like, okay, what do I have to work with? Nighttime, super fast, super stealthy. All right, assassin. So fun fact, owls don't make noise when they fly. I actually use this IRL fact to make like a ninja assassin, super serious, super stoic, and I wanted to show that. They're very emotionless. I managed to perfectly preserve the patterns. No eyebrows for them because I needed the horns to do most of the work. Much longer hair than Hoothoot, and their outfit is a lot more form-fitting. I still kept some traditional Japanese aesthetics, like an obi and like a half shirt, but I also went more to the ninja route. So I gave them a bodysuit. I gave them some daggers on their wings. They literally slice through people's throats just like through the air at night because no one can see them coming. They also have accessories on their actual talons. I needed these to look deadly. I needed them to look intimidating as fuck because this is an assassin. You don't see a lot of Noctowl, they're kind of rare. And the main reason is because they're dead ass just night owls. They're never around during the day. But it was really, really fun to come up with like the first ninja of the gen because I really wanted like a specifically type of like emotionless assassin aesthetic for them. And I think I nailed it. Ledyba. Ledyba are super cute. I like ladybugs, fun fact. I've always enjoyed ladybugs. I thought they were really cute. And this is like the most stereotypical like cartoony ladybug I've ever seen. And when it came to like actually making the Musu, I was like, all right, we have 6 appendages. Let's get to work. Look at this. So Ledyba, I wanted to make them very like in tune with nature, almost nature spirits in a way, but not quite. They're very non-verbal. They don't speak much. They can speak, but they'd rather not, because they'd rather commune with nature. And they have such a like nice soft color scheme that I thought, what better flower to pair them with than Wisteria? It's a lighter shade of purple than the arms and legs, and I thought it would look really, really sweet in general to have them be like super flower coated. I gave them some soft gold for accents, and the outfit in general is very like green and soft. The fun fact about the bug types, right, is that despite the fact that they have human faces, I made them segmented. They do look like bugs. They do act like bugs. In the concept art, I showed how I broke down the 4 arms coming out of its back. So they're not going to look human at all. Some people, when confronted by a bug type anything, would just give them an extra pair of arms and call it a day. I didn't want to do that. I want to actually give them segmented body parts, almost ball jointed, down to the fingers and down to the toes. After I did that, though, I decided to dress them, and I like the segmentation and the way I designed the body so much that I kept the clothing very minimal. It's a deconstruction of a kimono with just a nice little green obi, a lot of flowers, and I actually added some flounces. Part of the project was also keeping in mind that while I do have to use traditional Japanese fashion, especially old Japanese fashion, to construct these outfits, I'm not above, and I do think that it's important to know when to use Western flair. Stuff like ruffles that you don't have in traditional Japanese clothing because they're all cut in straight lines. I did add them because I thought they added a little bit of romance and a little bit of like whimsy to this Pokemon in particular. And Ledyba turned out absolutely precious. Ledian was fun because the second I saw it, I was like, oh, this looks like a superhero, right? It has like a superhero mask and this little outfit, and it's a lot more sleek and way less round than Ledyba, right? Ledian is a little bit more aerodynamic in its shape. So I took that in mind when I was designing the Musu. Thankfully, it also has 4 arms, so I was like, you know what we can do with 4 arms? So these fuckers are so cool, and they can see like in the night so well that they can shoot 2 bows at once. So for Ledian, I went with a more stereotypical archer outfit in mind. I gave them some booba protection, very important, some very light leather armor pieces here and there, but I also gave them clothing that prioritized mobility. Not quite the kimono. I still kept the Wisteria because they are an evolution, so I want to show some of the stuff that they used to have when they were Ledyba. They don't have normal eyes. Their eyes are super weird, so I kept the sclera in a different color, just made the hair longer, a darker shade of red, and I added a little bit more mystery to the equation, right? Ledian has a darker color scheme, so I wanted to preserve that, but I wanted the red to pop when it could, so I kept most of the color scheme almost at neutral tones. I kept it at dark blue. Also kept the foot coverings very light as well. And I added just like cute little repeated elements here and there. The Wisteria still in the outfit and in the hair. Also, still segmented, still ball jointed, still has very much buggy feet. The main thing to note was that I really wanted the red to pop here. That's why I use very dark colors. And I wanted to show that like they have a very specifically aerodynamic silhouette. So they're more sleek, they're a lot more slender, and they in general carry themselves with a lot more grace than Ledyba.
Itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Down came the goblin and took the spider out.
After Ledian, we go into the spiders that are not spiders because they don't have 4 legs. Fuck me. We go with Spinarak. I like these little things, but fun fact, they're not nice. The spider Pokemon are not nice at all. These are a weird mix between an Oni and a spider too, so let me show you guys what I did. Now, Spinarak, I had such a good time making this. First of all, it's another one of those Musu that have a weird skin color because the Pokemon itself is a weird skin color, and I think if I made them with normal colored human skin, I might have lost some of that punch. The most fun fact about them was actually constructing the body. When I'm making centaurs, I always have to take great care to make sure that the human elements and the centaur elements are seamlessly blended together. So I had a lot of fun with this one. This one, the big deal with this is the silk. So with Spinarak, the silk was the main thing, right? Because they use it everywhere. They lay traps in the forest with the silk, and people run into them, and they get eaten. Spinarak are not nice at all. So their main thing is that they have like their threads that some people venture out to try and get, and I put them everywhere.
Ariados on those spider yokai, Jorogumo.
I did. I actually did keep a lot of yokai and old Japanese myth in mind when I was doing this. You'll notice that I still gave her red fangs, even on her face. She has red lipstick, but I kept the red fangs. The eyes are actually black sclera, white iris, which I think looks really, really off-putting. I wanted them to be emotionless, but at the same time, they make really beautiful clothing because their silk is very, very valuable. So they can sew things together. So I decided to give them very like pretty, mostly colorful outfits, despite the fact, and this is a design that has a lot of color. So you would think, Lily, why would you put so much color in this? Because I balanced it. If you want to use a design that has a lot of color, I always say balance it. So the green had to be the most heavy color here. And I also kept it very cool toned for that same reason. The main standout here is the fangs, especially on the body, so I made sure that those were like bright fucking red and also red on the Musu. Even though it's a simple outfit, I really like what I did with all the webbing patterns. And in all, I think it turned out great. And she looks like a bit of a dick. So now let's move on to the evolution, which is, a real asshole. This is Ariados. This thing will eat anything and everything that gets in its way. And it looks particularly aggressive and intense. It's pointy. So let me show you what I did with this actual monstrosity of a creature. I'm actually really proud of myself for this one. I could have just made any spider woman. I could have just made like, oh, a Joroguma and called it a day. No! Because Lily's not here to fuck around. I wanted deadly elegance. Ariados are so fucking mean, you guys, that sometimes they will let prey go with one single string of silk attached to them so they can chase them down later and eat their entire family. They're not nice, and I did not want them to look nice. I did take a little bit of a page out of Demon Slayer's book for this one, and I was inspired by Daki, because I wanted her to look like a deadly princess. So I gave her a big kimono with a lot of layers. There's at least 2 layers in there, but I also used a bodysuit underneath. I kept the webbing pattern prevalent everywhere, and in this case, it's actually more obvious that there's webbing all over this thing, but I also wanted to use flowers, roses in particular with thorns. Something very pretty, but if you don't handle it carefully, it will hurt you. And Ariados will always hurt you. This thing is so fucking mean, you guys have no ideas. Very sharp teeth, kept those. Much pointier fangs on the fronts. Like, I added the pedipalps to the centaur because it's so important for a spider centaur to have them. That's actually where most spiders eat from, fun fact. They bite, liquefy, consume. So Ariados has incredibly pointy bits everywhere. This is one of the ones that I would say high threat level. It will kill you if it gets the chance. Don't give them that chance. But yeah, Ariados has like one of the more beautiful and very cruel designs that I actually came up with. I loved all the gold detailings that I did. I am very pleased with myself for this one. And I hope that you guys are too, but don't stick your dick in it. Do not do it. Do not. I swear to God, chat, don't do it. That was Ariados. First asshole of this gen. Every gen has a few, fun fact. Not every Pokemon is nice. I have a webcomic. And it has everything that you would possibly want to have in a webcomic. It has romance, it has action, it has funnies, it has big tits. It's called Magical Miss Lucy. If you like magical girls and you like a silly little love story that might not end up being so silly later, this webcomic is for you. You can read it over on Webtoons if you look up Magical Miss Lucy or Kinkymation. Currently we have 6 episodes out. It's big chapter and a bit. This version obviously doesn't have spicy shit, but there is spicy stuff over on Patreon. Patreon.com/Kinkymation. Do not go in there if you're under 18. It is a story about a magical girl in her 30s. You could say that she's a little bit too old for that job, right? Well, there's a reason for that. She was actually a perfect match. But if you want to find out why she's a magical girl in her 30s, read the comic. It's definitely worth your while. Chill over. Nugget! Nugget! No, fucking nugget. Because those things back there, yeah, these, that's not feet. It's a tail. This thing, I had to fucking suss out, these are its legs, the back wings are its legs. I had to suss out this thing's anatomy so bad that it has 2 pieces of concept art, which included me being viscerally uncomfortable because I couldn't figure out how to fucking set up the skeleton. This one gave me trouble, but I am pleased to say I actually managed it. So with Crobat, I decided to give it the back legs with wings, but I decided to do it in such a way that they fly basically in an almost crouched position. They can stretch their legs out. That's like the back of the foot. They only spread the leggy to change directions when they're flying. So Crobat are another ninja in this one, but they're different than most. With Noctowl, you can hire them. Crobat only serve one master that they love and that they also drink blood from or they will die. So when I was designing this one, I was like, I need to keep this simple because I really want to show off that body because I struggled to make that body. So I kept them very much akin to the type of outfit that Tengen's wives wear. So a very open kimono in the front. I added mesh. I added a lot of bat details, at least 2. I gave them weapons attached to their little baby wings and to their wings on their feet as well. And just heavy wrapped bandages on the legs, just for structure and support so they actually not hurt themselves while they're in midair. Yeah, very, very loyal. These evolved through something that Wilson came up with that he called the Ardent Shift, which is another way to say is something that doesn't evolve through levels. It's the equivalent of the friendship evolution in the game. There's different ways to trigger it. In the lore, it's just a strong emotion of any type. This one, I kept the outfit incredibly simple. Wanted it to be mostly dark. One really bright red accent because it has red on the eyes. Fishnets everywhere. It's a modern concession, but I granted it. And really, really strong leg wraps that could help her basically maintain structure and keep her legs safe while she was in midair. I'm very happy with it, despite the 2 bits of concept art and the amount of almost crying that I did for it. This one's Chinchou. This one was funny. They're so cute. They're like water electrics, which by itself, it's a fucking paradox. I don't get how these work. But look at how friend-shaped it is! Head empty, no thoughts. I love the eyes on this thing, so I immediately wanted to keep those. Keeping in fact that it has like an anglerfish kind of like vibe, I decided to do this with the actual Musu. Look at it! So the first thing I did with them is that I made sure that the antenna were coming out the back, not the top of their head, because I tried it on the top of the head and the whole design lost balance. This Pokemon actually does have legs. It's technically amphibious, because this one has legs on the back, see? So the main thing I wanted with them was to keep the design balanced, because if you put them on the top of the head, it would lose that like silhouette. Which is fine, the Pokemon has them on the back too. Kimono-wise, super simple. Short, big obi, really big detached sleeves. Because they don't have hands, they have flippers. Can they grab things with them? Yes, but not very well. They kind of have to like seal their way through life. Color-wise, their blue's pretty bright, so I wanted to really tone down the outfit. I kept it almost black. But I wanted to give it gold accents because of the eyes. So the eyes are really bright. I wanted to give their accessories a nice little gold flare as well. But I made the gold a lot warmer than the yellow tone for their eyes because I still needed that to pop a bit more. See me use the water droplet design a lot for water types. I kind of like tied it to the typing for this gen specifically. And I also used some lighter blue for some details because I thought it would look nice, right? So Chinchou is a very simple design. They help sailors get around because they're very bright. They're like little baby lighthouses. If you see a lot of Chinchou around, they're usually guiding ships out to sea. So they're very nice. A lot of humans like them. Those eyes are everything. I needed to keep those. I thought about giving them an iris with an X in it, but I was like, no, that's not extreme enough. I need to do the whole sclera. Lanturn. So I love these things. Even though it has one of the weirdest fucking shapes in a fish Pokemon that I've ever seen, I found them to be very cute and very charming. They have like vibes, but it turns out they're kind of goblins. Once I found that out, my fucking image for the Musu came clear in my mind, and I got right to work. So this is Lanturn. I would call Lanturn undersea pirates, but prank pirates. These are like the embodiment of it's just a prank, bro. Like they sink ships by mistake because they want to play. Another thing I had to do with this one was I also had to make the light bulb come out the back of the body. Again, I tried the head, the balance for the design was lost completely, and in order to preserve the silhouette, I had to make it come out of the back. The fun thing about these though is that I wanted to tie together their eye color with their main outfit, but since these are also kind of dipshits, I didn't want their outfit to be super light, so I made it black, dead ass. It's a great contrast to the blue skin tone and the fact that like they're kind of dicks, so it's a good color to use for something that isn't entirely nice. I gave them a little shark mask. I thought that would be really cute, like a little festival shark mask instead of a fox mask. In Japan, they use fox masks a lot because fox are like very like tricky animals. Lanturn are pretty tricky themselves. They mean well, they're just really rambunctious. So I gave them a lot more piratey vibes, especially on the top. I didn't want to do like traditional kimono sleeves, so I made them puffy and I just tucked them into the bandages. I thought that would give them a much nicer silhouette, and I was very much pleased to see it was true. Since they have like dorsal fins, I didn't want to hide those, so I basically made the front of the outfit much longer than in the back. It just needs to cover up the naughty bits and that's it. And I also just made sure that the color matched well with the actual Musu, but didn't also wash them out. Legit, how would you smash it? Not interested, I'm just curious. Oh, they have a hoo-ha in the front. All of the Musus, fun fact, they're all mammals. They all have a hoo-ha where a normal woman would have a hoo-ha. They're not born from eggs in the Musu-verse. They give live birth. So there is a hoo-ha there. I drew it. Now then, we're starting with the pre-evolutions. We begin with Pichu. I know what you guys are gonna say. And no, these don't evolve via age. Because guess what? They don't evolve via age in the games either. I find Pichu to be adorable. I prefer it to Pikachu. My favorite ones in the Pikachu line are actually Pichu and Raichu, believe it or not. Because I think they're super cute. Very round, very friend-shaped, fucking precious. Let's see what I did with the Musu. So all of the pre-evos in the Musuverse evolve through Ardent Shift, but they don't evolve through friendship. It has to be a strong emotion. For Pichu's case, is they want to master their electric magic. I actually went with something a little bit more modern for the outfit. That's a half kimono, half skirt type of vibe. Big bow, big cheeks. Since the Musuverse is kind of like not set in a specific time, but I kind of wanted to think about it like in the like early 1900s, I guess you would say. So I was actually using silhouettes and more Western concessions with a lot of these outfits. I don't want people to assume that these are young, because no, I gave them adult body types. This one just happens to be petite. They evolve through desiring something. Pichu needs to learn how to control their electricity. Once they master it, they will become Pikachu. It has nothing to do with age. Some Pichus die of old age like this. Since the actual base design for the Pokemon is so fucking yellow, I decided to not use super yellow colors. I kept the color scheme warm, obviously, but I mainly went with like something very playful. So I wanted the polka dots because I thought they were really cute. They matched the circles on her cheeks. Again, repetition is important. And I went with like a green skirt. I particularly like this cut that's a little bit shorter in the front because, again, super playful, super cute. Gave her some tights and gave her some like cute Western style boots with some bows on the back to match the one in her hair. And all in all, the vibe for Pichu is that they're super cute, but they don't have a great control over their electricity. So I also made their hair spiky on the bottom to kind of like show that much more playful nature and make sure that their ears were gigantic. That was like the main thing when I was like designing them on. I was like, I need the ears to be huge. Absolutely. We move on to Cleffa. I love this thing. Look at it. It's fucking perfect, my child. If you guys don't know, besides Screamtail, Clefairy is my favorite evolution line for Pokemon because A, fairy type, B, pink. So Cleffa are super cute and they're little baby nuisances. So and they don't have a lot to work with. It's a round thing with 2 fucking big ears. So let's see what I did. This is my Cleffa! So all of my Clefairy line has always been fairly thicky, and I wanted to keep it that way, right? Clefairy are funny because I wrote them as aliens, and they are still aliens in Johto. Cleffa are kind of like the assistants, so they just show up in big groups, but like no one believes you when you tell them they saw them. So they don't have the traditional Japanese outfits that most Johto Mons have. No, they have an actual spacesuit. They don't even have medieval fantasy outfits. Like, this is like the best fucking fantasy concession to a spacesuit that I could come up with. And this is a very, very simple version because the more elaborate ones are worn by Clefairy and Clefable. With Cleffa, I wanted to keep it cute, so I gave them really big boots, really, really big ribbons on the back, and I mainly made the hair super wispy and spirally and floaty. I kept their color scheme pretty solid, just brown and pink. Nothing super complicated here. And I wanted them to look really different from the rest of the Mons because they're from outer space, so they're not actually from the region specifically. Very, very soft color scheme, very approachable, very huggable. They don't speak. So they just get that cute little dopey smile always and forever, which I think is super fucking cute. I use moons a lot in these designs because of the Clefairy's ties to the moonstone, so it's something that I tend to repeat a lot. But I also did some stars on the hair clips as well because Cleffa are meant to be star-shaped. And all in all, the main thing with this Pokemon was to make sure that it looked as round and as soft as possible. Igglybuff! This thing looks incredibly unhinged. The red eyes are boring into my soul. They remind me of the eyes of a pigeon, and they have 3 balls on their forehead, and they're basically giant attention whores. It's a pretty easy assignment. Let's see how I did. Ba-ba-ba-ba! So, Igglybuffs, as I've stated previously, are attention whores. So they dress very flamboyantly. They don't walk, they float, so their grippers are out. They actually have normal grippers, you're welcome. Some of the only Musus with feet, actual feet. The funny thing about Igglybuff is that, like, they're perfect short stacks, right? They're not very tall. They're a fairly short Pokemusu. They can't sing as well as a Jigglypuff, but that's not gonna stop them from trying. So when I was designing the outfit for this, I was like, I need this to be as obnoxiously girly as absolutely possible. So I gave them a westernized kimono, a lot of ruffles, almost like a Lolita style outfit. You can actually see these. You can buy outfits like this online. A lot of ruffles, a lot of flounces, a lot of bows, very simple like cherry blossom patterns, but I did not want to make it pink because the actual Pokemon is already so fucking pink that it would get kind of lost in the shuffle. So I went with something really soft and light. And that kind of just shows off the fact that they just like to be praised. Like, Igglybuff live for the praise. Once they receive enough praise and they sing better and better and better, then they evolve into Jigglypuff. The strong emotion that they use to evolve is clout. So, feel identified, chat. Big attention whore. Togepi! This is one of my absolute favorites. It's an egg. It's an egg. That's it. It's an egg. It's an egg with hands and feet and the cute little face. And believe it or not, the initial concept for this one gave me a hard time, but I was able to overcome it and come up with what I think is one of the more unique designs in this gen. Let's see. Isn't she cute? So one of the big challenges I had with Togepi was the fact that the egg had to be attached to them, but You very quickly realize that I couldn't just make her inside of an egg because that would have looked hella fucking stupid. So my concession was to make it seem like yes, they did break out of an egg, but the eggshell is actually stuck to them. The shell is her clothes. Yes, she can take those off if she wants to, but she prefers to keep them. The main thing I wanted was to kind of like show a very jovial nature. The Togepi reacts to happiness, and they can bring happiness. If they are around negative emotions, they get sick. They will vom. They don't like it. So I needed them to be super cute and super happy. And fun fact, this was the initial concept without clothing. It came out so good that I was like, you know what? This one doesn't need clothes. This one cannot be wearing anything because if I give it clothes, I will lose the eggshell bits. And that's such a key element to the Pokemon that if I lose that, I will fail this design experiment. Do they lay eggs? Yeah, the Togepi line is one of the few ones that actually do lay eggs. Togepi can stay Togepi forever. These actually evolve through loving someone. It's one of the few ones that do, but if they don't find a partner, they will stay like this until the day they die. I also really like that I managed to kind of keep the head horns by making them like actual horns, giving her like a really cool crown on top of her head. And that's why I gave her such big hair, because since the Pokemon is really bottom heavy, I needed to make up for that in composition, which is why I gave her a lot of hair. But I put a lot of detail into the body, and just the concept alone was so solid that I decided to forego clothing. Wait, do they only have the toes? Yeah, they do. Only have the toes. Weird grippers. There's a lot of weird grippers in this gen, chat. A lot. So we went from an egg to a Q-tip. It's a Q-tip with wings. That's it. The egg patterns remain, which I really actually like. I'm really glad that they kept those. But the yellow is gone. So this goes from a very warm color scheme to a very cool tone one. And knowing the fact that these evolved through pure love, I decided to do something very interesting with the actual Musu. Let me show you guys. So Togetic are the closest thing that Johto has to an angel. These only really evolve through strong love, and they will dedicate their life to loving their partner. However, they're pretty long-lived. So when their partner dies, they spread joy throughout the land. Knowing that, I decided immediately that the color scheme had to be white. I could barely give it color. The only concessions I made was 2 accents. The eggshell patterns on its body, and the accents on the obi and sash, and inner lining of the kimono. I gave her a lot more ornamentation than Togepi, as when Togepi doesn't have any clothing, Togetic has a lot more. I dressed them almost like how they would dress angels in Japanese folklore. This is deadass something like what they would wear. I just made it a little bit more revealing, a little bit more sexy, because I want to show the egg patterns. And I mainly kept it with like those 3 colors, because that's all it needs. I wanted it to be like really soft and really like pure being of sheer joy. They will still bomb around extreme negative emotions, but they can handle themselves better now. Looks quite divine in the literal sense. It's supposed to be. They're not easy to find. Togetic are actually incredibly rare. You will find them though flying around spreading joy to people and with those cute little wings. And again, the most fun thing about this Pokemon was just making sure that I managed to capture that grace. I wanted them to be super graceful, super ethereal, angelic beings of pure joy. And I think I did pretty good. Not too. This bird has seen some shit. And that's why it's so fucking funny. I think this thing is hilarious because it's just a ball with wings and a fucking little flick on the forehead, and that's it. It's also one of the more colorful ones in this gen, and I'll show you guys what I did with it because I had to do some creative koroshiori to actually be able to work with this color scheme because it's bright, mama. It's garish as shit. So for this one, given the fact that it has a very, very strong indigenous type of design, I went in and I did some research and I found that Japan actually does have some indigenous tribes that make this specific type of clothing. I believe the tribe is called the Ainu. And I decided to take it and work with it because I wanted to kind of preserve that vibe. I didn't want to just give them a normal kimono and be done with it. I needed to be way more tribal and way more specifically ethnic than most Musu. They've also seen some shit, and you will notice very quickly that the outfit I made for them is in a very desaturated shade of purple. The actual Ainu wear purple like this, but it's actually darker. I could not saturate this purple more because if I did, I would have burnt out your retinas. So a big part of my job with this Musu, because making the body was easy, it's a harpy. Preserve the wing patterns on the feet and the feather and you're golden. My big challenge was Koroshi-oriing my way through not giving the reader eye damage. And I think I did pretty good. I loved recreating the patterns from the traditional clothing for this. I really liked the very muted shade of purple. It actually contrasts with like the very bright green really, really well. These are kind of like clairvoyants, right? They can see the future, but only in small bursts. They're not very emotive birds. They don't say much, they're pretty stoic, but they can see the future, and they do look like mystics. That was kind of the vibe. I actually had to do a lot of research for a ton of these into Japanese culture, because I didn't want to just do kimonos and that's it. That would have been incredibly boring, and I would have wanted to pull my eyes out very, very quickly. So a big part of the challenge with this gen was finding different cultural parts of Japan, different jobs, different roles, different ceremonies, different tribes to actually work with and make this gen feel as traditionally Japanese as humanly possible. Dumb shit bird. These things have seen everything, everywhere, all at once, and it shows in their faces. This is one of the funniest Pokemon design I've ever seen. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like the fucking 1,000-yard stare, the eyes on the boobies, the fact that it looks like a little old woman that's just like glaring you down. I don't know, mama, but I think they're hilarious. And I actually had to work through that laughter to make the Musu, but I think I managed to come up with a really good concession. This is my Xatu. So as you guys can tell, I still kept it pretty indigenous looking. I kept the color schemes, but I got a little bit more fantasy with this one because since they have basically almost skirt-like feathers, I didn't dress them. Underneath those wings folded in the front is just a strip of cloth. They don't wear a lot of clothing. They don't need them. So most of the work I did was actually in ornamentation. I took some inspiration from Tears of the Kingdom for this, from Zelda's jewelry specifically. So I could do stuff that was a little bit more mystic and that was like feather patterned, eyes everywhere, because Xatu actually can see the future. In fact, they can see the future to such a degree that they can't fucking move around because they think that any change that they do to themselves or others will affect the future timeline. They're basically terrified of action because they think it's going to change time. So I need to capture that like stoic fucking sense.
They've seen your browser history.
They've seen what you're going to look up. And it's bad, mama. And when I was doing the posing for this, nothing worked except trying to mirror the Pokemon's pose to the best of my ability. However, all of these designs still work in other poses because I do draw the biology for these in the concept art. But for the sake of preserving the silhouette as much as possible, I kept her pose very, very close to the actual Pokemon. I also wanted to keep the composition completely triangular, so I gave her really, really long hair that also splayed out at the bottom. And yes, there are eyes on the boobies. I could not put the eyes on the boobies. So yeah, a big chunk of Xatu was ornamentation because she barely wears clothes. But the clothes she did have, I wanted to make them resemble feathers as well. Oh, we're playing with the big boys now. Mareep. This is actually one of my favorite lines to design out of this entire dex because they are so cute. They're like so friendship and so adorable and so fluffy. Electric sheep. Can you pet it? No, it's gonna electrocute at you, but I don't care. I want the billion. So the Mareep line actually was really, really fun to design. I gave them a lot of purpose. The dex actually gave me a decent amount of stuff to work with. Look at her! So the cool thing about Mareeps is that they shed their wool a lot, and it's almost always electrified. It needs to be treated by mages to be made into garments, but they are actually the people who purvey most of the fabric in Johto, and it's very, very useful. They don't wear a lot of clothing. They're almost simple farm girls in a sense. There's a decent amount of Mareep around. So I want to keep the design focused on the wool more than anything else. That's why I kept the clothing really, really, really minimal. I want to show off that they have wool everywhere. So they have wool around their neck, on their arms, heavily on their legs, and obviously their hair is wool. That is not hair, that is wool.
Holy sheep, she's adorable.
Thank you! I also gave them tiggle bitties because I wanted them to be fluffy and huggable, and fat bags are part of that equation. It was really, really fun to kind of like capture the silhouette for Mareep on this because I was like, I need them to be blue-skinned because it's such an iconic design element, but I need them to be mainly fluffy. I didn't really start thinking about outfits more until the fluffy side of the equation. So for me, preserving and showing off how soft they are and how much wool they have was the name of the game for this line. Fluffy! They become pink, they stand up, because that's a thing that some Pokemon do, and they lose some wool. However, the wool is significantly higher quality. And I took this in mind when I was actually designing the Musu to give you guys something a little bit fancier. Let me show you. Fluffy's wool is significantly higher quality than Mareep's, but they don't have as much. So a lot of Fluffy actually get hired by noble houses and by aristocrats and just fancy merchants to make clothing for them. This is when their fabric starts becoming a lot more luxurious. So I want to show off the fact that these girly pops, pink things be a little bougie, all right? a much more heavy kimono, a lot more wool on the actual kimono itself. Ornamentation, they're wearing a thunderstone. I don't know if you guys noticed that. And their basic thing is that like they're artisans, they're craftspeople for nobles. So I wanted to dress them like how a noble would treat like their favorite artists back in the day. They would be kitted out to the nines. But yeah, the main thing was that Flaffy, since they have less fluff, I could actually do more with the outfit. That's why it's also a lot more ornamented than the other one. So I gave them a lot of gold details. I made them heart-shaped because hello, soft. Also fat bags. And most of the outfit is pink. I only really added a few concessions to color and accents because that blue on the tail is so striking. I wanted to add it in different places in the actual kimono. And these are like much fancier than Mari. They're very, very rare. You don't see them often. And because most of the time they're like hired out by noble families. Boobs fatter, fang pinker, kimono fancier, wool lined as well because of course, yes, incredibly huggable as well. And now let's show you guys the pièce de résistance, another one of my absolute favorite designs from this gen. This fucker, Lighthouse Pokemon. So fully standing up on the 10 legs, and it also becomes deleted bald. So many people asked me if I was going to make the Musu bald. I got concerned for your mentals. I know that the Pokemon is bald, but like it's super cute and I really love the color scheme for this one. Let me show you one of my favorite designs in this gen. Bad bitch. So the reason why I kept Flaffy pretty not ornamented was because this is the height of ornamentation, right? Ampharos shed all of their wool when they evolve. Step on me, please. Yeah. But the thing is, their wool is so magically imbued and such high quality that they use it to make one garment. Could be anything. Could be a kimono, could be gloves, could be boots, whatever. And that one item, they're so sought after that if one person buys one, the Ampharos is set for life. They basically become legendary craftsmen, artists. People fucking go to them even after they've made the garment for advice. So when I made the outfit, I was like, I need her to be fancy. So I retained the black from the fucking accents of the actual Pokemon to make the base of this design. And I also added a lot of ornamentation. A lot of little embroidered details on the kimono. I gave her a fan. I gave her a lot of jewelry, rubies, red lining on the inside, fancy boots and jewelry. And Pharaohs, for me, had to be like the height of fashion and decadence. They also have really, really long sleeves on the kimono, which were typically only reserved in Japan for special occasions, but Pharaohs wear them all the time. They basically are almost at royalty status because they're that bitch. And the most fun thing for me to design and put together for this was where I was gonna put the wool lining on the actual kimono. So many people reached out to me about this design, begging me to do the Mega, that I am actually highly considering it, but not yet. I just really, really had a lot of fun. I actually straightened the hair out completely just so I would have a really nice contrast between the fucking wool on the actual kimono and contrast between the Flaffy and Mareep. No longer is it soft and squishy, it's sleek and shiny. And it has a lot of hair anyway, a ton, it's almost down to the floor, but she keeps it up in very elaborate hairpins. And the fun thing about Ampharos was just like trying to capture that like incredible elegance and air of superiority of look at this amazing thing I made. I'm set for life. But that was Ampharos. You can easily tell why it's one of my favorites. Blossom. So Blossom, fun fact, I didn't know that these evolved from Gloom until I actually started working on this project. Fun fact. I was like, where the fuck does this come from, Gloom? The big challenge with this one, believe it or not, chat, was not making it look like a hula girl. No, Fantasy Japan. So here's what I did. I think I managed to work with it pretty well. So the first thing you might notice with this one is no legs. It does not have legs, it's all tentacles, all vines. Second is, that's not a kimono. I decided to go for an oriental route that wasn't specifically any country. Like this isn't like Chinese or Japanese or Korean. I kept it very ornamented, almost lotus flower patterns on the dress. But since she doesn't really have legs and the leaves do so much of the work, I mainly kept the fucking ornamented bits top heavy. So these are her legs. She has little baby tentacles. There's just 2 of them. So she's almost a Scylla, but not quite. Blossom was super fucking fun to conceptualize body type wise. The outfit was a bit harder, but I basically wanted to be like very happy, very cute, because these evolve when you treat a Gloom nice, basically. If you guys have ever seen my Vileplume, you'll know that that's the alternative, but if you treat a Gloom really, really nice, you get this. The Rafflesia flowers on her head were non-negotiable, except I rounded them out a little bit more. I made them a little bit softer. And with the outfit, the main thing I wanted was to show off a lot of flower patterns. So I made a lot of ruffles, a lot of like actual flowers on the design, petal shapes, and I wanted to basically keep it like looking like a dancer from nondescript Oriental country. Deadass. Because I wasn't gonna do a kimono for this one. Because actual Japanese dancers, they're usually geisha and they're wearing like fully decked out, super heavy kimono. I couldn't do that with Blossom, mainly because I want to show off the legs. That was like the big challenge with this one was not make it look like a hula girl and show off the legs. Rat! Oh shit, a rat, Meryl. This one was super fun because again, the Dex gave me shit to work with. I love this thing because it's a ball. I have a Meryl Squishmallow on my bed, fun fact, because I love this Pokemon so much. Yes, Pika Blue, shut up. Ba, 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 ba. So, a really cool thing about Meryl is that their tails can act as buoys, so they can like actually use them to float around. When I was designing this character, I was like, oh, what the fuck, and I'm gonna make them wear. And then I remembered, Japanese pearl divers. There are women out there in Japan who free dive for pearls. No oxygen tanks, no nothing. So I wanted to use kind of like that vibe for Meryl, but they're kind of like treasure hunters. They don't dive for pearls. They have a lot of bips and bops on their outfits because of that. I gave them a swimsuit. And I also gave them a lot of trinkets that they like to collect. They basically explore shipwrecks and pull stuff out. So I went with the pearl diver aesthetic. I gave them the same type of visor that they wear and the same type of basket that they use to collect oysters and a white suit, but that's about where the reference stopped. And I've added some more bits and bobs. I added a really nice like coral and bubble patterned haori. I want to keep it super cute and super easy to move in because this is for swimming. And yeah, the main inspiration was Japanese pearl divers because I thought it was really, really sweet. And this one, I wanted to just basically make it super soft and squishy. When Pokemon are very round, I tend to make the Musu a little bit on the chunkier side. Not because I need them to be fat, but because I want to preserve that softness. But that was Meryl, and I had a lot of fun with this one because the Dex actually gave me a lot to work with. Little baby water mouse. Let me show you guys the huge power! My fucking ace. This Pokemon is the fucking base that I have. Whenever I find it in any gen that I'm fucking playing, I use this thing. It's an egg. Yes, it's squirty. Yes, it's squirty. But believe it or not, the Musu's even better. Let me show you. Big Mama! They're much better swimmers than Meryl. So instead of just salvaging shit from shipwrecks, they do search and rescue. So I changed their toolkit with the design. I changed the Haori to like an actual kimono over a swimsuit, and I kept like kind of like a bandage style. They're still wearing their visor, but now instead of picking up shit from shipwrecks, like let me just zoom in on those booba. Look at them! I gave them wave pattern kimono, and I also gave them a lot of rope. So they use this stuff to basically find and rescue people from shipwrecks. I kept their outfit a little bit more movable, no loose jacket. Their visor is bigger. And they have like a little grappling hook thing to grab onto shipwrecks. They can dive down and rescue people very easily. They don't have a ton of detail. Their outfit is actually relatively simple. I also added little ropes to hold up the sleeves, mainly because their job is to find lost people and help them to safety. The legs actually, I did give her footwear in the form of bandages, right? That kind of matches the swimsuit. So the legs are actually fuzzy. It goes up almost right up to the ass. And then they have a little pattern here that switches back to the blue. Those are not shoes, those are her actual feet. I also did keep her fairly chunky. And I gave her a lot more like fur along the legs to kind of like round out the silhouette even more. Sudowoodo, this thing is hilarious. It's a rock shaped like a tree. It's so fucking stupid. It never fails to make me giggle. And I actually wanted to capture that stupidity in the design. So let's see how I did. Fake wood, real sex icon. Un palo! This is my Sudowoodo. So the challenge with Sudowoodo came into making it look like it was made out of stone and not wood, right? So if you look at the design closely, you'll notice that it's cracked. It doesn't look like bark, it's literally stone cracks. This was one of the more fun ones to design. I immediately knew when I was like making the base design for this that I couldn't dress them. Because even in the actual like lore for the Musu Dex, they pretend to be trees. They get caught immediately because if you so much as like fucking flash spit at them, they panic. They don't like water. But they want to be trees so bad. So the vibe I went with them was wanna be sacred trees. If you ever go to Japan, and if you were like ever hanging out around temples or sacred forests, you will see trees with a type of sash around them with like little paper fans, right? So Sudowoodo want to be trees so bad that they dress up as sacred trees. They don't really wear much clothing, anything else, and they tend to stay still for hours at a time until someone splashes water nearby, and then they bolt. These are the ones of the type of Musu that I would classify as a nature spirit, so I didn't want to dress them. I want it to be mostly moss. Is that why she looks nervous in the other art? Yes, it is, because he, you know. I wanted to show that like stupid dopey expression of like, ah, yes, I am a tree, that the actual Pokemon has. I think I did pretty good with that. But the main thing was making sure that the texture and like feel of the Mon were stone. So at a glance, if you're like far away and you look at this design, you're like, oh, that's wood. But then when you zoom in, you immediately spot that these are stone cracks. It's not wood at all. The texture is completely different. And it was super fun to design this and give it like moss and shit so they could like try and trick people into thinking they were trees, but they are very easy to spot and most people know what their deal is from a mile away. Politoed! Look at that dopey little face. This swirly, like fucking ahoge, it's so cute and the giant eyes are just like, oh, precious, precious fucking baby. The evolution for this in like the games is kind of weird. I think you need the fucking, Wilson called it the King's Rock in the fucking Musu Dex. I've just been informed by Hubby that the item is deadass called the King's Rock, so yeah, that's what they need to evolve. And on that note, here's what I made. Kermit the Frog! So Politoed evolve when they are exposed to a King's Rock, and they immediately become leaders. The things to know is that the bigger the ahoge, the higher the position of authority. There's not a lot of these, but usually if there's more than one in one community, they will literally give up leadership to whoever has the ahoge of power. I'm not joking. Design-wise, I didn't want them to go out and be full noble because this is still part of the Poliwhirl line and I very much tied those to nature. So I gave them like a kimono in like a subdued golden shade and it's still ornamented, but I did add a lot of nature details regardless. I still kept a lot of vines, a lot of leaves, even in like the obi, I tied like almost like a string of seaweed there, right? It looks super cute. It's ornamental, it's probably embroidered, but it still looks natural. And I also gave her some gold jewelry that was vine and leaf shaped. I didn't want to do anything super harsh and angular. I wanted to keep it all organic because I kind of wanted to play with that like little swirly ahoge that they have there, you know? These are also performers, they are singers. They can literally captivate audiences with their voice. That's like their big thing. So like the better the singer, the more respect a Politoed has as well. So people just go and like hang out in marshes and water and bodies of water where they're at to just watch them sing and perform.
Moving right along in search of good times and good news.
And that's like kind of like their thing, right? So like they're basically like leaders of their communities. And I wanted them to kind of like just hang out, but also have some sense of authority. That's why the outfit is more ornamented than a normal kimono, but at the same time, I kept it natural. And again, this is another one that has a weird skin color. I had to preserve that mouth shape when it was a frog, which is very like aggravating because everybody sees a frog and think, oh, Suyu. Like, no, it's a frog. Frogs have that mouth shape. Look at the Pokemon. I needed to actually preserve it. Kept the super big eyes, and mainly wanted to make it, despite the fact that it's pretty colorful, a very cohesive color scheme. So I think I did a good job avoiding anything way too bright or glaring and just doing like a very nice soft gold with a lot of those little swirly patterns that works very well as something a performer and a leader would well. Hoppeep! Another pink thing. There are many pink things in Pokemon, which I'm very, very happy to see. Hoppeep are, I'm not gonna lie to you, fam. They don't do much. These are the ones that Wilson and I classified as Pokemon who just want to hang out. So they're not exactly super useful. They're very cute though. And I actually want to use that cuteness in like their main lore thing, which is they float. So based off this stupidity, this is what I made. This is my Hoppeep. These are short stacky. They're very like fucking physically like short. They have fat bags. And I barely wanted to dress them because like their whole thing is that a light breeze can send them flying like 12 miles away. So when I was designing the outfit, that was the main thing I wanted. I wanted it floaty. I wanted, first of all, the leaf to be huge because that's like their propeller, right? So the leaf had to be like a really huge focal element. And then after that, the outfit, I kept it almost monochrome. I mainly really wanted to have some accents of green and yellow here or there, but I kept it mostly pink because the Pokemon is so aggressively pink that I was like, I don't want to break that. No undies. I don't care. I did that on purpose. Very, very floaty sash. Really, really big obi in the back. That's their skirt. So like the outfit is basically a deconstructed obi. They're not wearing any dress because like, again, any clothing would weigh them down, and they enjoy being tossed about like a fucking,
like a plastic bag drifting through the wind.
Grippers. Yeah, also feet. They also have normal feet. I only give them 3 feet, though, to kind of like fit with that paw aesthetic. Very minor ornamentation, just some leaves here and there and some flowers. A lot of the grass types, I don't give them a ton of jewelry because they don't need them. They're very like tied to nature. And considering the fact that they're super short and super fucking light, I think that giving them minimal clothing was the way to go. And they're very round also, so I didn't want to completely kill that aesthetic. Is the size similar to the Pokemon though? They are about the size of like a giraffe from Grand Blue Fantasy. So they're like about 150 centimeters. They're very short. That Pokemon looks like a necromorph. Yeah, a little bit, don't it? Pink things unite. So that's Hopeep. Skiploom. There is nothing in there. You gave me nothing to work with. Useless member of society. You guys want to know what this fucking Dex entry was? Chat? They float. That's it. They go up high during the day and then they float back down at night and they do nothing. But I still managed to turn that nothing into something because that's my job. This is my Skiploom. So Skiploom are a little bit heavier, so they just float up and down. They tend to like not do much though, other than that. So let's focus on the design for this one because the fucking Dex gave me butt fuck nothing. The outfit is still pink, but I kept the skin green for obvious reasons. The main thing to note here is that I had to like make sure that the flower on their heads was visible at all times. But it's so big and floppy that I didn't want to cover their eyes, so I had to move the petal around a little bit. The actual kimono is very floral, a little bit fancier. I added some fluted edges to the actual skirt here, and a lot of petal patterns everywhere. I wanted to really showcase the flower bit of Skiploom, right? The stuff that looks like lace on the kimono, I actually like fucking modeled it after flower petals. And I gave her an obi in the front because clothes weigh them down, so they tend to lose them quite a bit. And I mainly wanted to play with all of the blooms in the Pokemon, so there's like flower motifs and petals everywhere. I really like the pink for the Hopeep, and that shade of green with pink tends to look very, very sweet, so I kept that. Very like warm toned. I could have gone for a full green kimono, but I think that would have looked very dull. And considering the fact that the Pokemon's Dex entry is already very dull, I had to make it interesting somehow. So it was mainly through decent use of floaty elements, a really nice silhouette that still very much resembles the Pokemon if you ask me, and a lot of really good repetition that I managed to make this outfit look surprisingly elegant and very, very cute for a Pokemon that doesn't do a lot of much. It does a whole lot of nothing, chat. Let's move to my favorite of this evolution line. Floating Orb. This one was really, really funny because like their whole thing is like flying around spreading the seeds. And in the Dex entry, once they're done spreading the seeds, they die. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Absolutely fuck no. So I had to change some stuff. But design-wise, here's what I did. So this one, the outfit is a little bit fancier, but at the same time, it's not as dressy, right? I kept the floaty sash on all of them because that was part of the vibe. Jumpluff float around a lot, so I want to actually use the cotton ball motif everywhere. I necessitated that extreme repetition because I really wanted to fucking hammer the fluffy thing home for these. I made all of the cotton bits super big on her hands to the point that like she can barely use her hands. They manage it somehow. But I also wanted to make the outfit not so much a bright pink or green, a light blue. Kind of like the sky, because they're usually in the sky. However, I didn't want to just forget the pink stuff that I used for Hopeep and Skiploom, so I added it to the lining of the kimono, the obi, and the sash. Green accents are also visible throughout the outfit because she does have leaves on her head. And if I had only left the ones on her head, it would have been just way too bright and it would have been like the thing that you could only look at, right? So that's why I added green on the bottom and green on her neck as well. Also, no shoes, grippers out. But the main thing is that I kept the fucking cotton ball thing, oh look, a dandelion everywhere in the design. Because when these lose their seeds, they become human. Basically, just a blue person. They don't die, I didn't want to do that. But yeah, it turned out super fucking cute. I omitted the sleeves in this one because she already has like the puffy thing on their arms, and I thought that would have been like completely useless to give her like an actual kimono sleeve. So bare arms, bare leggy, just floating around being super cute. Dipshit, Ipom. Ipom is super fucking funny. It's like the most dipshit monkey to ever dipshit monkey in the universe. I had seen them before, but I had seen mainly their evolution. So I was like, wait, this should look different. And Hubby was like, nope, that's exactly what the first evolution looks like. So this one was pretty tricky because of the hand on the tail, because I actually wanted it to be a hand, not just an orb with nubbins. So Ipoms are little shits, and I wanted to capture the little shit spirit in both the vibe of the Pokemon and the actual outfit and body language. Aggressively purple, so I had to be really, really careful what colors I picked. I also went a little bit Journey to the West with this, like, you know, monkey that thinks it's big shit. It's an actual hand, by the way, with 2 fingers. They can slap the fuck out of people. It's so fucking funny. I gave them some chaos in the outfit with some asymmetry in specific parts. I also used asymmetry through color. as opposed to using asymmetry through shape. I added some elements here and there that also made it look a little bit more like, rambunctious, right? Like how the kimono's hanging off on only one side. They're not wearing underwear. There's like 2 colors in 2 different places. The socks are the same, but completely different colors, almost as if she grabbed the wrong set on purpose. I gave her like one of those like little rope bandanas that always looks like very like, yes, rapscallion. Super fucking cute. And some black details to tie it all together. The monkeys were very, very fun. The hand was a challenge in and of itself, mainly because I wanted it to actually feel like a human hand, but with just 2 fingers. What the hand do though? It can slap you, it can spank her. She spanked herself in the lewd, actually. As I worked through the gen, like now that it's actually finished, I found that a lot of the times, the thing that I had to focus on was the concept of what I wanted to do with the Musu, and not so much be like, oh, well, it's a monkey, so it has to just be a monkey. No, I sometimes try to give them jobs and things to do because I think that oftentimes helps to add to the vibe of the Pokemon. The idea is to design with the Pokemon as inspiration, but if you have to deviate in some ways or do something slightly differently, it's completely okay. The important thing to retain is the vibes, the energy, the spirit. If I can make the silhouette match as closely as possible, that's amazing, but sometimes things need to be changed. That's why the hand is not an orb. Oh God, useless! Useless! If there was a Pokemon in this Dex that perfectly encapsulates the problem with Gen 2's fucking Dex writing, it's this thing! They do nothing! Seed, useless fucking thing. So hard to design too, by the way. This was not easy, okay? This is my Sunkern. So she was really tricky to design. I had to fucking keep that fucking seed silhouette without doing too many changes. And in the end, what I did, if you look at the concept art, I might actually have to pull this one up just to show you guys. This is the concept art for Sunkern. So when they are not flying around through the air, their legs can unfurl like this. So when Sunkern is actually not curled up in on herself flying around, this is what her legs look like. She was just hard to work with because of the shape of the Mon more than anything else. And she's functionally useless too. But I like how I did it. I like that I managed to extend the patterns from the seed from her face and all the way down her body. And I also really like that I made the sprout come out of her back. And that way I got something that really greatly resembles the silhouette of the actual Pokemon, but still functionally being, a woman, you know? Dipshit! I love Sunflora because they remind me of the bit in Scarbio that I had to collect them and I was running around at like 3 frames per second. It was hilarious. Sunflora are just what it sounds like. It's a fucking sunflower Pokemon. They're super cute, very like active and annoying during the day. I really like it though because it's just dead ass a flower with a face on it. That's it. And that's actually exactly what I did. Let me show you. This is my Sunflora. So that looks like a beautiful woman, right?
Wrong.
If you look closely at the design, and I'm actually super proud of myself for this, I'm gonna have to show you guys the concept art. I basically reconstructed human musculature into a plant. Sunflora is a flower with a face. This is not a person. This is a flower with a face. So I kept the outfit pretty minimal because I wanted to show off that musculature. This is another one of the ones that you could say it's like vaguely Japanese. It's a kimono on the top with something completely different on the bottom that I wanted to resemble leaves. I want you guys to like pay a special attention to the head on this thing, okay? Because that is not a normal human neck. That is a flower stalk that grew a face. When I was making the body for this, I had to make sure it very closely mimicked human musculature, but I also really wanted to make something about it work with the flower on the head. So she's perpetually shrimping. Isn't it cool though? I did such a good job with the anatomy for this one. I almost made her naked, but I couldn't do it because I wanted to make like a lewd that actually worked. This is the back of Sunflora's neck. So you can see from the back of the lewd that it's a stalk, it's not a neck. And that's also why the outfit is so simple, because like the bulk of the work for Sunflora's design is in the musculature. I kept the design very like yellow tinged green with some purple accents just for a splash of color. Very, very light ornamentation. I just wanted the face and the body to be the standout here. Yanma. This one was tricky mainly because it has a lot of colors, but bugs are usually very tricky to work with. If you guys have ever like encountered a dragonfly IRL, dragonflies are assholes. And Yanma is also an asshole. Let me show you what I did with this one. So basically what I wanted to do with Yanma was make a flying Oni. These things are dill holes, all right? They eat people. They are in the firm Musu asshole category, incredibly high risk, do not approach at all, by all means. The really fun thing about this was constructing the bug body in a centaur way that could also look good like standing straight up. So the body for this is highly segmented, and I did want to give them exactly the right amount of limbs. Their fangs are red, they have like horns. I gave them very pointy elements. Again, one of the big things you can do with a character that's villainous or that's evil is show intensity through triangular shapes. And Yanma has a lot, but with the Musu, I wanted to push it even further. Spiked pauldrons, spiked hip guards, really long spiky feet, spiky hair. For me, the main thing I want to convey was danger, and these definitely look dangerous. Like, it's not just the fact that they're like bright fucking asshole red, they're just really dangerous, period, you know? Cute gremlin face. They're not cute, they're super mean. So yeah, the main thing with Yanma outfit-wise is I wanted to use the orange from the wings to make like a more like bright yellow outfit. It's very, very colorful already, so I thought I would stick to like super warm color scheme for this one, because there's already like 4 or almost 5 colors here, so I didn't want to add a ton to this. If evil, why so pretty? That just happens in nature, chat. Whooper! So this thing was a challenge. This thing gave me gray hairs. Do you guys want to know why? So one of the big challenges of this project is maintaining silhouette and also maintaining like as much of the look and feel of the Pokemon as possible. So if a Pokemon doesn't have arms, the Musu can't have arms either. What they have though is like the start of growing arms, right? So they're amphibious. And part of the reason why I barely dress them is because they can't really dress themselves. Now, they can grow arms, but usually that means that they're gonna become a Quagsire. So most Wooper just have like these little like arm growths almost. Like they have shoulders, they have like up to the elbow, but I didn't want to just give them stumpies because that would break silhouette. So I kind of gave them like the beginning of an arm. I know, it's cursed as fuck, but that was what I had to work with. You can tell that these are attached to the torso still, like they're not separated. Some of these are gonna be cursed, but like that's by design. This is one of those Pokemon that like to wild it out. The Musu themselves are almost always in some body of water. If you take them out, they coat their skin in like mucus that can be toxic. So for clothing, since they can't really touch other people, they dress themselves with vines and flowers, very simple stuff. They almost always have some mud on them. And the main thing about Wooper is that like they almost always look super startled. They look super fucking dopey. And the biggest design element and my biggest challenge was no arms. People could have been like, why won't you cross them? Why don't you tie them behind her back? You can't hold that pose for the entirety of your life. If the fucking posing can ruin the silhouette when they break pose, then I didn't do my job right. Making it match via posing, I consider it cheating. You have to take their biology into account. And Wooper has the unique biology of no arms. The boy. Quagsires are the cutest fucking thing on the planet. There's nothing in there. That head is empty. It's so cute, but it has arms. It becomes a salamander. It has arms, and it can do a ton of shit with those arms, like actually tie their shoelaces. Ta-da! My Quagsire, they're a little on the dopey side. They're not the smartest Musu in the bunch, but they can get shit done, right? Another one of the aquatic types that I didn't really want to super dress them, so I gave them a swimsuit with like a really cute obi and some nice purple details.
Plus 2 arms, minus 1 brain.
Yeah, exactly. They gained arms, but they lost the brain. I also did like a lot of mud-type accessories on them because that's kind of like their thing. These are also very thicky. They're very, very like rotund, right? It still has a really, really big mouth. And I want to kind of like keep that like very slicked back silhouette. So I made their hair very flat and close to their heads. I really genuinely like the body type I got for these because they're supposed to be like pretty rotund. Just a swimsuit. A very easy to draw outfit, honestly. Big obi, one little ornament. Their main job is protecting Wooper. That's it. They don't do much of anything else. Like, these are also in the firm I'm hanging out equation of the Dex. So design-wise, I tried to keep it pretty simple because they're very simple creatures as well. Again, the vibe has to be there. And if the vibe of Quagsire is I'm just hanging out, then that's what we do. It's time for some EVs, bitch. We start with Espeon. I like this thing because it's supremely cat-coded. Eevee's very funny because Eevee's kind of like cat-dog-coded, but Espeon is aggressively cat-coded, like super feline. Main thing to know is super purple, super cute, stone on its forehead, evolves during the day. These are some of the most popular Musus in this gen by far, and I think I know why. So Espeon is like almost, you could say, like a disciple of the sun. This is a psychic type, which is funny because it uses like a lot of light for things. Yeah, but like triangle it out. So for Espeon, I wanted no dark colors anywhere. It had to be light, and it had to be bright, and it had to be like almost like were dressing almost like a goddess, but not quite. These aren't like the Eevees in Kanto that I gave them like academy uniforms, because these are new, so they kind of like do their own thing. So Espeon in particular, they do like magic, and they study magic, but not in the same way. Their whole thing is that they just like hang out with humans, they evolve through Ardent Shift during the day, and the outfit is more like a bit of a fancier deconstructed kimono. I made it backless. I mainly want to give it like sun patterns everywhere. It's very weird that there is no light typing in Pokemon, but we can ignore that. I wanted to mainly use the sun symbolism because that's how they evolve in game. And I added some cool details like some wispy bits on the kimono that I made purple to match their hair and tail. And everything else was very warm toned. Warm yellows, soft whites, red accents to match the stone on their chest. The Eevees were super fun to do in this gen. They're usually very nice, but like they had very solid concepts, so they gave me a lot to work with. When I have a strong concept for writing, I usually have a strong concept for design as well. That's why I struggle with the ones that are just hanging out. But for Espeon, the fun fact was just using that like sun motif everywhere. Umbreon is like the opposite of Espeon. These evolve during the nights. I like these because these are canine coded. I love the color scheme for this. I really, really love the patterns on this thing. And I like how like fucking stoic it looks. It's giving man.com.org. Let me show you guys what I did with the Musu, because it's another one of my favorite designs for this gen. I made a dark assassin. So the thing with Umbreon, right, is that they're not easy to find. They're very, very rare. And their whole thing is that they're vigilantes. So for the outfit, I went with something more rebellious. No kimono, I went with a bodysuit. The only like heavily Japanese concession I made, I also destroyed her makeup, fun fact, goth girlfriend. The only Japanese concession I made for this one was the hat. The Wanderer's hat with like dangling bits and bops, which is very, very cool.
Umbreon's hat makes it the coolest design of any of the Musu in either gen, bar none.
Thank you, Midnight, and thank you for the sub. The fucking hat was my favorite thing out of this entire design.
It's a nice hat.
Just like fucking mesh bodysuit. The fur patterns go very high up, but I still wanted to give her like thigh-high boots as well. She actually has paws too. And I made her sleeves basically shaped like her ears, but with red lining to kind of like go with the very, very bright red eye color. The actual fur is green tinged because, again, I didn't want to work with straight black. I don't think it would have looked as nice. So that's Umbreon's vibe, Vigilante Assassin. The hat is like my favorite thing out of this entire thing, but the coat and bodysuit are also like a great combo. This is one of the ones where I went way sexier, but I think it's because it really fit the vibe. It's supposed to be edgy and dangerous, and I think that a part of it is like being a bit more risque. Murkrow! Murkrow was a bit of a to design because the hat, right? The hat is feathers. So I had a few options. And like, for me, circumventing design with clothing, cheating, not allowed. So I had to actually make this a part of her anatomy. It's supposed to be Western Witch. Yes, but I have an aesthetic to stick to. When I choose the aesthetic for a region, I stick to it, chat. Those are the rules. It's a character design exercise. That's why there's so many kimonos. If I cannot work around the limitations that I set for myself at the start of the gen, I'm not doing my job right. You won't become a good character designer by just bending the rules whenever you want. It was fairly tricky. Let me show you guys. Murkrow was tricky, but I managed to get the feathers on her hair in a shape that does resemble a hat.
It's a nice hat.
She has one of the weirdest faces of all the Musus, because I actually gave her a very hooked nose, because beak. I can't give them actual beaks because they look weird. So I gave her a very hooked nose instead. I think that worked out pretty well. She has a very sharp face, almost witchy, right? So she's not conventionally attractive, but I'm actually super obsessed with that. Another completely deconstructed kimono. The most fun part of this outfit is probably the hood. It's gigantic. They use them to trick people because Murkrow's thing is that they're thieves. They steal shiny things. They're corvids, right? Like birds like shiny things and they actually will steal them from people. Also gave her like a lot of dangly things that would look cool in midair, like bandages. But yeah, you can see that the feathers are actually a part of her hair. And they just go down on the wings as well. Another harpy. None of these have arms. Murkrow was a lot of fun. And like no undies. A lot of these don't actually like to wear underwear. And again, hood is the main thing that they used to hide that very iconic hat shape when they go steal shinies. I wanted them to look kind of off-putting in a way, and the main thing is I needed them to be super, like, weird.
She looks like she'd run a fortune-telling scam.
Yeah, they would. Anything to get something shiny, chat, they will do. The color scheme for this one was particularly fun. I want to keep it dark and broody, but then I noticed Their red eyes and that little red accent on the tail, and I was like, oh, I have to make this outfit blood red. It cannot be any other color. And it actually turned out really, really well in my favor because there is a green tinge to the feathers, which contrasts with that shade of red so nicely. But I still wanted to let green have the upper hand. It's super, super important if you're working with two very, very bold colors to let one of them be more dominant than the other. Slowking! Oh, yes, purveyor of intelligence! Wisdom! This one also uses the King's Rock. By the way, you don't see it on like the actual Slowking, but I did put it into the design just because I thought it would look much nicer. Let me show you guys the Musu. Slowking was another one of those Musu where I went with an outfit that could be Japanese, but it also has silhouettes from other Oriental regions. So there's some hints of China in here as well. Sometimes I have to make concessions to other cultures when I'm working on a region because I need different silhouettes. I can't just rock kimonos the whole time. So the cool thing about Slowking is the shell, right? That's attached to their head. You guys will notice that I actually put the King's Rock on the shoulder. And the shoulder, normally, it's facing away from the face. Like, it has eyes. But considering shoulders are also Musus in this verse, this actually worked out in my favor. They still look super dopey, mind you. And that collar thing is actually attached to their neck. I used the patterns on the obi on the back. I gave them really tall shoes, a lot of gold ornamentation, and very much like fancy shell-like patterns. Also fat bags, yes, very fat bags, and a lot more hair than a slow-mo and a slow-bro, because these are like very regal. They are considered widely to be some of the wisest people in the region. They run libraries, museums, and in general, people seek them out to gain knowledge. I really, really like the red on the stone on the shoulder and on the neck piece, so I wanted the actual outfit to be red as well, because it's such a striking color, and red is normally reserved for nobility. So I kept that for Slowking. All in all, it was a very fun design to put together. I actually had to concept art the hair like twice because I couldn't quite get the shape that I wanted, but I really liked what I did with it because the hairstyle is just kind of loops around and envelops that shoulder and just makes it really feel like it's a part of her, you know? Stop staring at me with them big ol' eyes. No! Then we move on to the only ghost type in this gen, and I'm so fucking mad because Japanese fucking mythology and ghosties are fucking fascinating, but they only gave me one to work with. But I think I made some really solid shit. So with my one ghost type, I made this. This is my Misdreavus. So Misdreavus are funny because they're ghosts, but they can actually retreat into the red pearl on their neck. So the red pearls, the blood pearls, had to be a huge part of the design for this one. I didn't really want to give them clothes because I want to kind of like capture that spirit vibe. And if you guys notice closely, they don't have arms. Those arm-like appendages, it's actually the hair. So to make it like a really cool Japanese ghost, I did a lot of those like strips of parchment that they use to seal spirits, but I broke all of them. It looks like a ghost that like escaped containment. The red pearls are probably the standout of this design, although the only one that is Misdreavus is that one big one at her neck. The other pearls, if you break them, nothing happens. They're decoration. I didn't want to do a lot of clothes for this one, mainly because it has such an interesting shape. I thought it would be a waste to do it, and it almost already looks like they're wearing a dress. So I want them to have like a very specific, almost Tim Burton type of eyes. You could see them more in the concept art because she's looking up in this, but she has very, very heavy dark circles and eyebrows, very heavy lidded, right? It was a pretty fun one to work with because of the limitations of no arms. Unlike Whooper, I could actually overcome them pretty easily with this, with the hair. The Misdreavus, only ghost type in this gen, very, very sad because it has fascinating lore. I wish there was more, but I'm fine with that because I got to make something really, really cool out of it with a pretty simple concept and a pretty cool execution. When I tell you guys that people were concerned for my sanity with this one, everybody, when they heard I was making Gen 2, they were all like, oh god, no, it has like 25 forms, what the fuck are you gonna do? Funnily enough, I solved that question 6 months in advance. I made a tentacled creature. So, Unknown presented a bunch of specific design challenges, right? You would think the main one would be, how the fuck do they become letters? No, I actually solved that one pretty quickly. The actual challenge was the eye! The fucking eye! And you know what the worst part is? It took me a fucking day to figure out the skull anatomy, to draw a Cyclops girl that did not look like complete butt vom, and then in the end I covered it! I covered it, chat. I covered the eye because I wanted to do like a fucking Shikigami vibe. And I still had to design the skull. In anime, a lot of Cyclops just look flat because they don't make space for the nose, but I didn't want to have that problem. Keep in mind, I was still making the lewds back then, so the main reason why I actually gave it a giant fuck-all eyeball, chat, was because of the lewd. But yeah, the cool thing with this design is that the tentacles on their back, they have 4 tentacles on their back, and they use those to make letters. They don't speak. They communicate kind of like telepathically, and they also spell shit out, sometimes super, super fast. This one is an E, fun fact, because when I played through Gen 2, Wave got the unknown and just named it E. So, and it was an E unknown, so this is for Wave. This one's for Wave specifically. When it came to like dressing them, I wanted the really big obi, but I wanted like Shikigami vibes because they're messengers, right? In lore, when we wrote it down, Arceus made these. And they just live in a different dimension, but they pop in to say hi every so often. And the tricky thing about them was the eye that I ended up covering like a fucking asshole. To this day, if I ever need to work with a Cyclops, I go back to the concept art for Unknown because I actually managed to suss it out. E for A, baby!
I love how the flowiness of the tentacles makes them look like a calligrapher's brushstrokes.
Yeah, that was also intentional. There was I was looking at a lot of Japanese calligraphy when I was designing these because I was like, I need them to look inky and weird. Again, unique design challenges, but I think I overcame them all really well. I also needed the outfit to be completely monochrome because these Pokemon have no color. So I had to be all white, black and white. Monochrome color scheme still got the job done. And that way it resembles paper, so it looks really cool too. We move on with Wobbuffet. It's a punching bag. Wobbuffet is Wobbuffet is Wobbuffet. I was today days old when I found out that the Pokemon is actually the tail on the back. I did not know this, but that's why it fucking bounces back. They're annoying to deal with, they're blue, they're funny as fuck. And I did not have a ton of stuff to do here because it's pretty humanoid already, so let me show you guys what I did. So with Wobbuffet, I had the unique challenge to actually make a Musu that was 2 Musus in one, because the tail is actually alive. So I made it so the main body of the Wobbuffet is actually this thing. It's the little tail. It's another little creature, and it hides behind the big blue thing. That's the thing that can tank attacks and shit. I decided to make it a slime girl because it already had a very like slimy shape. It was like glorpy. And instead of just making the tail shaped, I was like, you know what? Let's make another smaller creature in there. And that's what the tail is gonna be. No clothes for this one because it's genuinely like a slime creature that you find in caves and shit. Very, very simple, straight to the point. If you punch a Wobbuffet, it punches you back. The female version of Wobbuffet has red lipstick, and I thought that was so fucking funny that immediately I was like, yes! I do try and keep the gender patterns and specifics into account when I'm making these, because that is a thing that like some female Pokemon have. Next up we have Girafarig. This one made me laugh. It has a tail on its butt that no one knows if it does anything or not, but it's still there. And it's a giraffe. It's a tiny little baby giraffe. It's very cute. It has pants. It has an adorable face. I love the antenna. This one I knew immediately what I wanted to do with it. Da-da-da-dan! So I immediately knew I wanted to do Centaur. The tricky thing with Girafarig was the long neck bit. So I wanted the body on the Centaur to be fairly lean and very long torsoed, so I could keep that silhouette of like the long neck. I did keep the tail as is. It does like stare people down and shit. And I wanted to like keep that silhouette of like, this is like a creature with a long neck. So having it be a Centaur made sense to me. I did not want to break that silhouette at all. I actually based these off Japanese horseback warriors. They wore a lot of patterns like these, like they just fought on horseback. They had like tiger stripes, a lot of tassels, a lot of red. And so for me, going with the route of like Japanese cavalry warrior was a no-brainer, you know? I wanted it to be a little bit tribal, a little bit wild. When I was doing like the research part of this, I saw a lot of paintings, like old school Japanese paintings of warriors that had outfits similar to this, and I was like, oh, bet. This is exactly what I want to work with. They also use magic, so it's not so much like sword, but they do have magic because they're psychic types, normal psychic. And the heads on the back do stare people down and they do things. Oh, this fucking... Let me tell you this. Pineco and Forestress were some of the ones that gave me the most trouble, but also some of the ones that gave me the best design work out of the entirety of Gen 2. So, this is not a Pinecone, it's a bug, and it's held together by spit and fury. And apparently they're dill holes. So knowing that, I made this. I am actually so proud of myself for this one. So the Pokemusu is actually a bug type. She is segmented under there. She is buggy. She has green skin. And it's kind of like a centaur attached to like a big pine cone cocoon, right? And all of their armor is made out of wood and spit. Okay, that's tight as shit. Thank you! The thing about these is that lore-wise, I made it so if you get like remotely close to them, they will cut you down, no hesitation. They don't give a shit. They're not like thinking about anything except defending their forest. So I just sat there scratching my head for the longest time until I went down and I was like, okay, I need these to be like some sort of warrior. So I went in to actually get some inspiration from some old-timey samurai shit, and I saw from an old anime, I think, that had like a pointy hat, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. So the bulk of the design work for this one was the armor. The biology came together super easily, but the armor took me a hot minute because I wanted something that looked plated, that would fit with the pinecone theme, but I needed it to like resemble that like super tough strength hardness that they make with spit, so I just put spit all over it. She literally went Hoothoot on her armor, and that's what we got. I had a lot of fun with this one. See, there's spit everywhere. Disgusting. I had a lot of fun with this one, even though it was gross. But the real challenge came with its evolution. Words cannot begin to describe the immense level of hatred I feel for this thing. I hate it with a burning passion, because I saw it and I was like, how in God's green earth am I going to turn this into a woman? How am I gonna make this viable? It's an orb, okay? It's a nugget! This one actually did make me cry because there was a lot of scratching my head over it, but at the end, I came up with something pretty cool. Let me show you guys. This is my fortress. Now, I knew immediately that I could not have it just be a normal bug type and be done with it. I needed to have the shell. So what I did was, I actually segmented her in a way that her cannons are coming out of her hips. I did want to give her normal-ass samurai armor, but the bulk of the work for this Musu is on the actual shell around this. It looks fucking dope, and it's bright fucking red, but these things are bitches. They can take the armor off, by the way. The actual Musu's the red thing. That's really cool, Lily. Thank you! Prime example of having to bust your ass for content creation, even if it's your dream. I was literally fucking crying. Unironically, one of the best designs, considering how little the basic design gave and how much you did for it. Oh, Wilson is in chat. Hi, Wilson. Wilson, if you guys don't know, he is the guy responsible for making sure that the Dex entries read well, have awesome references, and all in all, are coherent and not Lilyisms. But yeah, Forestress, I wanted another warrior vibe, more samurai, but I wanted to be fancier, so I went with bigger headdress. I gave them war flags on the back. And I didn't give them a ton of armor because I still wanted a lot of the red to shine through. But what I did do, I kept it within their line of color, black and red. So I added gold accents. That was like the only other color concession I wanted to do. And I did a little blue accent on the sword there just for some pop of color. The thing about these is that they also shoot you down without question. These are shoot first, ask later. Super fucking dangerous. But they have a really cool vibe that to the point that people build like walls around them because no one wants to get near these. Dunsparce! I adore this thing because it looks super dopey. It has tiny wings that do nothing and it's just bright yellow and cheery and soft and squishy. Super silly. I love this thing to bits. It looks so fucking stupid. And I decided to make the Musu equally silly. The main thing I can describe about them is that they're chunky, and I wanted them to be chunky. I wanted them to be very soft looking, and I wanted them to be drunk. All the time. Literally all the time. Outfit-wise, I wanted to be like cute, but a little bit sloppy. So I didn't give them like a full kimono. I gave them like a halfway thing with a lot of like the same type of rope they used to tie their gourds. And like the important thing is that like these are meant to be kind of like Tsuchinokos. That's like the creature I based off for this. Fat snake, right? Everything about her needed to be like soft. Even the hair, I segmented it like the Dunsparce. The little wings, I knew I needed them to be tiny and virtually useless. So can she fly? Kind of. Like she can lift her hips a little bit off the ground and that's it. That's as far as we go. But the fun part about this one was making sure that it looked like very well-natured and properly zoomed out. Fucking Gligar! This one was fun as fuck to make because the design is already very humanoid, but it took me reading 2 seconds of the Dex entry to figure out that this one was gonna be a dill hole. Let me show you. So, Gligar had the unfortunate limit of the arms, right? They're completely attached to her torso. It's kind of like a flying squirrel type of deal. So when it came to dressing her, I had to get a little creative. I didn't want to give her just big sleeves, and I didn't want to just do kimono either. I still wanted to have them like have some concessions to the Japan thing without going full kimono, so I went with the pants, kind of assless chaps in a way, and no bodysuit, but I did use like a very tight black panty that I actually matched the colors to with the shoes, and I kept the color scheme very muted for the clothing because the Pokemon itself is very bright, and I didn't want to like wash out that brightness with bright clothes. I I kept the hair relatively desaturated as well, and I just made sure that the outfit would be something that she could technically wear, but also something that would not get in the way of the glider, you know? I gave her a lot of really big elements, a lot of beads, a lot of rope, very sturdy fabrics, bandages here and there, sarashi instead of like a normal top. They're meant to be kind of wild. They live in caves and they like capture people to use them for like working in their mines. They're not nice, and I needed them to kind of have like that almost manic expression that the Pokemon had, which I think I recreated pretty well on a person. It looks pretty good. Looks like one of those kites ninjas use. That was the plan, actually. I'm glad someone caught that. It does look like a ninja kite, and that's why I wanted to give it like a kind of ninja vibe, despite not really being a ninja. Steelix was definitely a fun time. It's just bigger. The fucking steel bits rotate, and like big jaw, you know? I really love the artwork for Steelix, because it's technically, it feels shorter than an Onix, but it's bigger. And knowing that and having the jaw being a focal point, I decided to do this. This is my version of Steelix. You'll notice firsthand that these are barely dressed. Onix wasn't dressed either. I did not want to dress these. The main thing to capture with Steelix was the scale, the size. This thing is gigantic, you guys. If I put the trainer next to this, he's fairly small.
I'm in danger.
Steelix was fun because I had to figure out the jaw thing without making it look completely deformed. So I made it steel plates that are actually attached to her head. They are a part of her skull. Those do not come off. And I actually made the body segmented. I made it cracked. I wanted it to look like a steel statue.
Would, if I can figure out how.
It might be a bit tricky, but you can. Thanks so very much for the sub. The main thing with her that I wanted to do was just basically keep that like statuesque vibe that Onix had, but really, really play up on how much more severe the shapes are for this. So like lore-wise, they go to train their bodies in the mountains until they become steel, and that archetype of character, they usually don't wear a lot, but you always see those beads. Always, always. They're technically prayer beads. Snooble! I love Snooble! Snooble are the cutest thing on the planet. Look at it, it's pink, it's super cute, it's fucking ugly. It's an Uggo, but an Uggo that we love, and they get offended if you call them ugly. I really like this thing. I think I managed to really capture the spirit of this creature. This is my Snooble. So, Snooble are spoiled, and I want to show that by giving them a more like westernized version of a kimono, a more like Lolita fashion, a lot of ribbons, a lot of frills. I wanted to keep like their main color scheme very pink, but when I was dressing them and I was looking at like my color choices, I was like, oh, I don't want this kimono to be pink also. That would kind of wash her out. So I saw like her blue spots, and since I knew that I would not be able to show those, I decided to use blue for like the bulk of the kimono. And I think it turned out super fucking cute because it makes the pink of her face really pop. Same with the lavender. I think that instead of using blue ribbons, I went with purple because I thought that matched really well. The main silhouette for Snooble is just very like pudgy and kind of pouty. So the face was the most important thing to get right. So I needed her to look like appropriately grumpy, big teeth. She has really, really big hands and paws. Not quite a furry, but very, very fuzzy. I basically wanted you to look at this thing and think, oh, a brat. So lore-wise, these are very, very pampered. They're usually like, believe it or not, they're one of the few Musu that I would consider to be very Yuri-coded. They spend most of their time around women who they serve and who they basically like, they're not like maids or anything, they're not pets either, but they just like hanging out with people who think they're cute. And then we have Grand Bull, which is even uglier. If there was like a competition for ugliest Pokemon, I think that fucking Grand Bull would win it. Gigantic jaws to the point that they can't even fucking lift their heads. They're so silly, but they're so pink though. Now, Grand Bull had a decent limitation for me in terms of the teeth, because I could not make those coming out of her mouth. I tried, but it looked so fucking bad. So when I was actually designing it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a page out of Anime's book and I'm gonna make the snaggle tooth, the flesh tooth. So these protrusions do come out of her actual face. There is a tooth underneath there, but I didn't want to make them tooth colored because it would have looked really bad. I tried. Color scheme wise, since they have like such a cool undertone for their body, I did decide to make the kimono pink. Added some more spikes though. I kind of kept it like goth Lolita, but very bright anyway. Still a lot of ruffles, still very cute, very girly. But the irony is that in spite of how rough these look and in the face, they're useless. They're completely useless in society. They don't do anything. They only really evolve if they're like spoiled to the point that they just become this. And I think I did get that like pouty, spoiled behavior down in body language and in just the way that they carry themselves. I made them very unsure. That's not a confident stance. I didn't want it to be a confident stance. I wanted them to be kind of like, I I will look intimidating, but if you try and fight me, I'm gonna cry.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
This is actually Wave's favorite Quillfish. It's a pufferfish with like a fucking paddle on the back, and it's green and it looks perma-angry, and it has like a really funny lip color. The first thing I said to myself when I saw this was rotund. So Quillfish was actually really fun to design. It's one of those Musus that they need a funny skin color for the design to be cohesive, and this is them deflated. They can inflate their actual lower body more, but I didn't want to make it inflated for the actual dex entry because I thought it would look really like weird, you know? Clothing wise, I wanted something really simple, but not a swimsuit. So I went with clothing that looks like wrapped bandages, almost. It's like stripes of fabric. I made them in black and purple. Purple because it's a good color to contrast the green skin, but I kept it super desaturated. And black because it just looked really, really good overall. It was a really fun aesthetic, kind of like resembling, the outfit almost resembles paper, which I thought was really fun to do. There was like definitely an origami vibe when I was constructing this design. And I just wanted to wrap around the Musu and like highlight the spikes as opposed to like blending in with them. I could have gone for like a very like torn up outfit for this, but I decided I wanted something a little bit more sleek and a little bit more aerodynamic, considering the fact that the Pokemon itself is already really bulky. Yeah, and I also went with very intense, really spiky hair because it kind of fits the silhouette of the Pokemon as well. Sizer! This one was actually really fun to make. I made Scyther for Gen 1 previously, but Scyther had some design elements that I wanted to really keep. The main thing about this that I really love is that I like that the pincers look like faces. I love that about it, and I like how streamlined and sleek it looks. It looks like super smooth, almost like an action figure. So I really, really, really like the Pokemon's design. So let me show you what I did. So this is what I did for Sizer. So Sizer's design was mainly less about the clothing and more about the body. So the Pokemon is basically coated in steel, right? So I knew I had to make it really striking. I didn't want to do anything that would take away from the ridiculously bright colors and the pincers for this. In fact, to the point that I actually mimicked the Pokemon's original posing. So when it came to actually designing this, the pincers had to be like the most bombastic element. And I had to keep the hair simple, but striking. Everything in this silhouette needed to have good flow because I needed the Pokemon's body to do all the talking. Outfit-wise, they're kind of like warriors that use no weapons, but not martial artists, not entirely. I went with a cool, like, half-on, half-off kimono type of vibe, and I kept it green, but a very muted green, so it would not clash with the red too much, but it would still give me, like, a nice complementary color that makes the red pop even more. A lot of gold accents in this, a lot of medallions, and I did tear up the robes a little bit because to get dressed by yourself with claws like this, you might fuck it up a little bit. It's a very like simple design clothing wise, but that's what I wanted because the actual Musu comes to be by coating themselves in metal. A lot of them die, so they needed to have a look of like wizened, hardened warrior about them. I like the yellow circles, they play off the false eyes with the claws. Exactly! Thank you! I wanted to use those false eyes everywhere. That's an element of repetition I definitely knew I wanted to have. So the actual body does have the patterns, you just can't see it on the Musu, and they do have the bug torso on the back. It was one of those designs that I saw and I immediately knew what I wanted to do with it. Big, really big hips, segmented, obviously, a really like striking face, very piercing eyes, very tiny wings, nothing huge. And mainly wanted the claws to be like the big element, so I kept the feet pretty sleek, despite the fact that I was trying to stick as close to silhouette as I possibly could. Big, meaty claw! Shuckle. Believe it or not, this one actually gave me a lot to work with. The actual Pokemon is just like a creature in a rock. This is not a turtle. And I was today days old when I found that out, that Shuckle's not a turtle, not even a little bit. They're like a worm. So when I heard that they actually like have like fucking shit in their shells, I knew exactly what I wanted to make. That's surprising. I thought this one would have given you a lot of trouble. When the Dex entry has a lot of lore, it's not that hard to make these. My Shuckle, I definitely wanted something really dainty and really delicate. It was a lot of fun to make the actual Musu for this body-wise, but when it came to clothing, I actually thought about it and I was like, I don't want something that's strictly Japanese because I wanted something with a lot of flow. I wanted something that would like resemble someone that makes high-end liquor. They make alcohol in their shells and they're very, very prized for that. So I want something with a lot of flow and something that seemed very delicate. So I went a little bit more towards the side of vaguely Chinese for these, and they do have the face patterns as well, those like little false eyes. Almost to kind of like resemble those like peach goddesses that Japan has, but with a silhouette that was a little bit less Japanese and a little bit more China. I did bend those rules with some of the Musu because I thought that some silhouettes worked better than others. Still though, my favorite thing about this was designing all the little patterns on the robes and on the actual dress. And for this one, for example, like you can tell by what they wear, what type of liquor they make. So this one would be one that works with peaches or like pecha berries. So this is Shuckle's concept art, right? She can definitely go into the shell and they go in there when they need to ferment stuff. They don't wear clothes in there. They are actually kind of like worm, not quite Scyllas. They're a weird type of lamia, like a wormy lamia with like a lot of like different segments and tentacles. They're usually inside of the rock though. They're very sweet, they're very, very delicate, and because of that, they're very shy. She's very, very cute. She has like a very doll-like face. A lot of people like prize them for their beauty, but their main thing is their drinks. Can people cut on the shell with them, or is there not enough room? There is probably not enough room. Then they use it to ferment their drinks too, so if they let another person in there, it would be contaminated. You're basically drinking warm girl bathwater. Do not let Dunsparce near Shuckle. Heracross. Heracross was actually super fun. I've always liked this thing. I like the female version more because it has the heart. But look at that little face! Head empty. There is nothing in there. But they're so cute and they're so strong and they're just little beetles. I really like Heracross. I think that they're the sweetest fucking thing. I'm actually so happy with how my Heracross turned out. Yeah, I actually did make the female horn for this. I will use the female characteristics whenever possible because it is a part of the lore. They're all monster girls. So with Heracross, similar to Scyther, I didn't want to do a ton of clothing because like the body speaks for itself. Most of the work I do with the bug girls tends to leave me going like, oh, I don't want to dress her because the bodies turn out so cool. So I decided to go for like almost a superhero of the forest, but ancient Japan. Face-wise, I wanted to keep that and them to keep like really well-natured expression, but I had to contend with the horn. I actually made it go down into the bridge of the nose because of that, and I had to keep the patterns. Eyelash-wise, I gave them like the little circles and stuff because I thought that looked really cool. And with the hair, I kept the heart motif from the horn going all the way down the braid. Clothing, I gave them like very, very tight armor, almost wrapped in like bandages. And I wanted to give them jade, pauldrons, and hip protectors, but they don't need anything else. They're already incredibly strong, so they don't need a lot of actual armor. Most of it is decorative. A lot of bandages, really simple patterns, and just greaves. The main thing I wanted was to kind of like preserve that like superhero type of silhouette for them, because they do have like their shell on the back too, so I didn't want them wearing a ton of clothes because of that. She turned out incredibly cute. I'm so happy with my Heracross. I definitely think I nailed that like dopey, buggy vibe while still making them look pretty imposing. I actually used Kamen Rider colors for the armor, fun fact. That's why I went with like that shade of green specifically. Now we're moving on to one of the ones that a lot of people told me that they really like, Sneasel. I love this thing because it looks like a dipshit cat that will absolutely steal your wallet. And it made me laugh when I saw it because I was like, what the fuck is that? Its ear or what is it? Yes, it is. Sneasel are very funny and they have a vibe that they're just going to absolutely destroy your house. And I saw this and I was like, oh, I know what I'm making. So immediately I made this. When I came up with the concept for Sneasel, I wanted to make them thieves immediately. Not just any types of thieves either. I wanted them to be mountain bandits. Mountain bandits that will do anything and everything to steal everything you own. So when dressing them, I forwent the kimono and I went with like an actual pantsuit type of vibe, but I wanted to have at least one very bright concession, so I kept the very bright red obi. And for their cloaks, I went with cloaks that look like they're covered in fur. It's actually something you see in like Japanese media of the traveler that's traveling through the cold mountains. They have like this fucking type of like fur cloak. Shoe-wise, I gave them just like normal human sandals because they're thieves. So if you see Sneasel tracks, you will run away. So they wear normal shoes, despite the fact that they have beast feet. The cloak was probably the standout for this. They also have like the Wanderer hat, but I didn't show them wearing it. It's behind their backs. They do have like their characteristic like tail feathers and the ear feathers, but Sneasel is literally the Musu for the person that's up to no good. Do you like baddies? Go get one of these. They will con you out of all of your money, but it'll be the ride of your life, mama. And then we start with like Teddy Ursa. This thing is adorable. When it comes to like cute Pokemon of Gen 2, I think that Teddy Ursa takes the cake. Look at it. Isn't it so fucking cute? I would protect this thing with my life. My Teddy Ursa are confectioners. They make wagashi, I believe is the actual term for Japanese sweets out of honey. That's their thing. So when I was designing them, I made them very, very sweet and soft and cuddly. I didn't want to give them super sharp anything, even though they do have claws. I kept them very rounded, very friend-shaped, huge eyes, absolutely fucking gigantic eyes, the big moon sign on the forehead, and very fluffy hair. I needed them to be incredibly friend-shaped. Outfit-wise, I gave them like a typical craftsman outfit, but with a little bit more of a girly pop flair. So they have like a work shirt and work pants, but I gave them peonies, like flowers that make like nectar that bees usually go for. Usually Beedrill, they work with Beedrill honey, and Combi honey as well. For the colors, I went with that like really light purple that contrasts really nicely with the almost super light orange of their actual skin color. But in the end, I wanted to just be like super chunky. You guys can't see this, but they're chubby underneath their actual outfits. Their eyes are gigantic. Everything about them needed to be super huggable. But yeah, very soft, love making sweets, and I really wanted to have them like have that like working girl vibe with a feminine flair. So bows, pink, flower patterns, very soft colors. And then we're gonna go to their sisters. Big Bear! This is the Rune Bear of Pokemon. It's big, it's sharp. I would not like to run into it in the forest, but I very much love the vibe of it, and I immediately, when I saw it, I knew what I wanted to make. Let me show you. Now, you'll notice immediately that she's pretty much tits out. And I have a reason for that. They don't need shirts at all, ever. I wanted to show off that ring. When I was designing this thing, one of the hardest things to work with was where I was going to put the ring. I didn't want to do it on the stomach, because it would have gotten deformed because she has abs. So I was like, okay, let's put it on the chest, and let's design an outfit that would be fit for like a big bodyguard bear mama, right? So the standout piece in this outfit is the jacket. Their expression is way more fierce than Teddiursa. They're a lot more intense in shapes, a lot more jagged angles, a lot sharper claws. And I did add a lot of moon elements, but I also added the honeycomb elements. They have very dark clothing with really big striking patterns and shapes. I did let them keep their like working pants, but for the most part, they have very light armor. And the most fun part about designing this was making that jacket. It has 2 layers to it. And while it does have sleeves, they tend to like just prefer to wear it on their shoulders. It is tied and has like really big bows because lore-wise, they have 2 jobs. Their main job is to find honey for Teddiursa to make their sweets with. So they break into Beedrill hives a lot and they're fine. They can tank that. Their second job is to protect Teddiursa shops from people who might be up to no good or might want to steal sweets. That's kind of their vibe. But since they intimidate customers, they're usually around the back. You don't see them in the shop because they tend to scare people away. They're very pointy. And I'm so happy with this design, and I love that jacket. Slugma! Make the joke. Go on, do it. Slugma is fun because it's literally like a little slug made out of magma. The dex entry is ridiculous. A child wrote these. But they have a really cool design regardless. So in the interest of not burning off weens, I made this. So my Slugma is actually just really hot slime. There's no lava here. They live near volcanoes, but they can cool themselves down. Immediately when I was making the design for her, I definitely knew I wanted no clothes, because similar problem to Typhlosion, they do run pretty hot. Not lava hot, but pretty hot. So I took inspiration, I went to Google, and I started looking at cooling lava flows, especially from volcanoes in like Hawaii, that have like the outer crust is still dark, but you can see the lava glowing from within. And that's what I use pattern-wise to make these basic bikinis. And I also gave them like a very like intense expression with those like really big eyes. And most of the fiery formations, it's all slime. This is a construct. You can do the Slugma, but you have to be really careful because to do the Slugma, they have to cool themselves down a little bit. And if they cool themselves down too much, they could die. They could crack and die. So they only really do that with people they really trust. Thank you very much for the super chat. Every time. Thank you for the super chat. But yeah, this was a pretty simple design. It kind of designed itself. I wanted Slime Girl, I wanted Lava, and I went for it. Now, Magcargo are super fucking cute. I like snails. Hubby likes snails. There's still a snail loose in the office. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's so adorable. But I didn't want to let go of the Slime Girl motif for this. So I had a thought about it, and I actually ended up coming up with this. This is my Magcargo. So I definitely wanted to keep the shell aspect. They are a snail, but they're still a slime. So instead of being like an outright mollusk, they use their rocks as like batteries, right? So they can still walk around with those. They can actually travel because that keeps them warm. And the only thing I wanted to do clothing-wise was I wanted their slime hair to be longer to kind of match like the droopy bits on their faces. And I also wanted them to have a little bit more of those rock formations on their body. To give it a little bit more design, I framed the body, I played with the actual anatomy for silhouette, kept it very simple, not a lot of clothing, because the star of the show had to be the shell. So I put a lot more detail into like the shapes of the actual shell that they wear. Face is very neutral, very nice expression, just very simple. And they're droopy. They're still very, very hot, but they can cool down easier now, and they run less of a risk of dying because they have their rock on their back. And yeah, not a ton of stuff, but I definitely saw the volcanic inspiration and I took it. Sweenoob! They are mops that have gained sentience, and they're super cute, and they do nothing but snore and scuttle around, and I love them. This was super easy to design. Let me show you what I made. A loaf of bread. A loaf of bread that's fuzzy. So, Sweenoob is actually naked. Let me elaborate. When I was working on the design for Sweenoob, I was like, this is going to be like Yeti levels of fur. What do I do with this? And then I remembered, because I saw a YouTube video of all of those little that like to hang out in hot springs that put like oranges on their heads and stuff, even though it's like super cold out. And I was like, aha! Hot springs, I got this. So Sweenoob don't wear clothes because they spend most of their time in hot springs or around hot springs. And since they're so fuzzy, they're usually very warm. They don't need a lot of clothing. They're very chill. So I wanted to have like their face be like eyes closed, very soft expression, very pillowy, cushy, squishable, but very fuzzy. They do have hooves. They didn't need a lot, so the main things I wanted to add was like those hot spring elements, like the little wooden tub and the water and the towel on their head. Their little ears are right there. They do have ears. Most of them live in or around hot springs, and they run hot spring establishments because people just love to go take baths where they're at. They're like the experts in hot water. They never get cold because of their fur, and they can actually sniff out where hot springs are located, and they like flock to them. So usually most onsen in Johto have at least one Sweenoob in their staff or running around or in the bath because they always find them. But yeah, very, very soft, very, very fuzzy. But they're not actually the fuzziest in this line. Let me show you. Fucking Pillow Swine. Pillow Swine, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, how? This is just El Tío Cosa. Mama, it's just a mountain of hair and the snout. That's it. But, thankfully, I already had this Sweenoob line to work with, so I made this. So Pillow Swine is even fuzzier than Sweenoob. They're so fuzzy that they actually can't really get into the bath because they have so much fur that they would sink. And when I was designing this, I was like, okay, I need a shit ton of hair. And I need them to not need to wear any clothes, but I still want to dress them in hot spring fits. So I went with like the towel, and that's it, mama, nothing else. The towel, fat bags, super important that I gave them the tusks. I gave them coming out of the sides of their face instead of being attached to their mouth. I did try to attach them to the mouth, but they're so big that they didn't look good that way. The really big droopy ears, and I had to keep that kind of like U shape that the Pokemon actually had without giving it like fucking Giga Hunchback vibes, so I used the hair to do that. So Sweenoob actually find the baths via like sniffing them out, but the ones that actually dig them up and build onsen are Pillow Swine. They don't use them as much as Sweenoob, but they do build them. Mamoswine is not in this gen, so we're gonna have to wait till that one comes out. So yeah, with Pillow Swine design-wise, fuzzy, very, very fuzzy, like almost their entire body is covered in fur, and just onsen fit. Dead ass. Just super furry and towel. No need for further clothing. One of the easiest designs in this gen. This is where we're starting getting in the realm of the weirder ones, but ones that I had a lot of fun making. Corsola. I actually love Corsola. Can you guess why? They're just precious baby beings of pink beauty. And they're sharp and angular, but like they're still friendship somehow, and I very much appreciated them. But when I was actually designing for them, I was like, you know what? We can do something interesting. So I made this. For me, when I was designing Corsola, I was like, okay, I could just make a girl covered in coral, but that wouldn't be that interesting. So I wanted to preserve the silhouette, and in doing that, Corsola are literally sentient coral pieces. They grow out the big piece of coral at the base, and they're often covered in pearls and other bits of coral, fabric that's been there for ages. They don't really move much. They can, but they don't. They usually find a place to stay rooted in for all time. And the main thing with this design was to keep as much pieces of coral on her as I could, keep it very ethereal, very floaty, and very pink. So everything about this is pink. I only really gave them one purple accent for it because I thought it fit the color scheme well. Their coral is magic. They can be used as amulets to breathe underwater. They're like the kudzu vine of the ocean in Johto. Like, they spread everywhere. One Corsola can literally spread coral for miles. But if you can find them, and if they like you, they might give you a piece of coral that you can use to enchant to breathe underwater. They just don't say much though. They're very, very pretty, but a lot of people consider them vaguely threatening. I also wanted to make sure that any bits of cloth I put on the Musu were distressed, because I wanted them to show age. Coral can be thousands of years old. So I wanted that, like, any fabric that they had to look old as fuck. All of the pearls and ornaments that they have are offerings from other people because they don't move much. And I just wanted the design to kind of capture that, like, kind of eerie underwater feel. I think I nailed it though. This is the evolution line that drove Wilson probably the battiest. The Remoraid line was very fun to make, but I knew immediately that I was gonna hit a roadblock when it came to Octillery, because this is a fish that looks like a gun. And it does look like a gun, and it's super fucking cute. And knowing that, and knowing what it evolves into, I had to get creative, so I made the Musu look like this. This is my Remoraid. When it came to actually designing the Musu, I was like, it evolves into an octopus! So I decided to give it not fins, but tentacles with fin protrusions. If you take a good look at Remoraid here, at the close-up, you will see that these are not at all fins. They can wrap around things, usually mantine. I gave it that way so that way when it evolves into Octillery, it won't be super weird. They have their horn, and they actually are some of the few Musu that have very westernized clothing. I wanted to give them naval military uniforms because they are a part of the military. They serve under Lugia, and they basically keep order in the ocean. They're sticklers for the rules, but usually pretty well-natured. And they have a very interesting anatomy because they do actually look like guns. They shoot water. That's like their thing, like pew pew. So when it came to making their outfit, I wanted something that was like a naval uniform, but not super complex because they do spend most of their time swimming. I gave them like the sailor collar, and I gave them a white shirt underneath. Easy peasy, really, really cute officer's hat. And also gave them a nice little red accent there to kind of like break up the monotony from a very, very cool color scheme, so it would actually look a bit warmer and be more interesting to the eye. And then we have Octillery. When I tell you guys that Wilson was having a stroke, I'm not lying. Because he was like, Lily, what are we gonna do with Octillery? And I was like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure something out, because it's Octillery. But yeah, Octillery is a really funny little octopus, because it has like 2 arms in the front and like 4 at the back. So it's weird. And it has a really dopey little face. I shit you guys not, when I released the Musu, it was around the time that that massive fucking leak came out that had some weird creation myths. And I dropped the Octillery, and everybody was like, Lily, no! And I was like, I swear to God I didn't plan this. It just dropped at the same time. Bad timing or good timing? I call it good timing. Octillery is what you get when a Remoraid goes rogue. So they still have a naval uniform, but it's a little bit more tattered, and they're wearing it more in their own way. I was thinking more delinquent when I designed this, a little bit more Jotaro from JoJo, if you could say. So I gave them a lot of spikes, a lot of ripped clothes and accessories, a kind of like bastardized version of their uniform, some bandages here and there. They're a lot more intense than Remoraid because they believe in their own brand of justice. So they're vigilantes. And I wanted to show that vigilanteism in the outfit because it's still their uniform, but they're not wearing it the way that they're supposed to anymore. They don't care anymore. I made them a Scylla, but they still have mainly more tentacles in the back. So from the front, they almost look like they have legs, but they don't. It's still all tentacles. And I just meant to make them a little bit more pointy and a little bit more like, what's he chewing on? Seaweed. Johto logo being crossed out as night. That's the Lugia logo. There are 2 different logos. I didn't show them in this video, but they are in the Dex entries. If you look at the top right of every single Dex entry, there is a logo that is either 3 Pokeballs with a line on the top or a Sakura flower. The flower is Ho's logo and the Pokeballs are Lugia's logo. They're not generals. You'll see with the legendaries when we get there. But Octillery definitely has that more anarchist, like, vigilante, I am Batman vibe. They're not mean, though, unless they think you're an evildoer.
Christmas, just a week away.
The first time I saw a Delibird, it was, like, in the shop for Scarvaio, and as soon as I said, like, oh, what is that? Everyone in chat started screaming, useless! And yes, they are, but, like, they're so cute, though. It's a little Santa bird. What do you want? It's precious! And my main design challenge with this one was, Santa's not Japanese! What the fuck do I do with this? But I think I came up with a really cool solution. Let me show you. A Christmas Tengu. This is my Delibird. My Delibird is essentially a fucking Christmas Tengu. I could have done Harpy, but since these are flightless birds, I decided to just give them like vestigial wings, like little baby ones, as opposed to giving them like full ones. The thing with Delibird was I wanted to definitely keep the Japanese aesthetic while also giving some Creamus concessions. So it does have the Delibird color scheme, they have masks, they have the wings, and all of the entirety of the color scheme for the outfit is also very Christmas coded. They have like your typical Tengu design elements, the poofy pants, the pom-poms, the sleeves, like the fans made out of leaves. But at the same time, it's still giving Delibird because their tail can be used to store things. So they throw fucking presents at people. Like that thing that they're holding, that's their tail. It's not a sack. The mask stays on during sex. It does not come off. It's in the lewd. Mantine. This is one of my actual favorite Pokemon of all time. That is not a fairy type. I love these. They're so fucking dopey. They're so fucking cute. They just fly through the water like big pancakes with like their little Remoraid buddies, and it just makes me so happy to think they're so cute. And when I was concepting for these, I was like, I need them to be weird. So I made them weird. So the main challenge with Mantine was the size. I knew I wanted them to be big. There's a little Remoraid there for scale, so you guys can see just how big Mantine's body actually is. Very, very large, because Mantine actually transport Remoraids around. When it came to making the design for Mantine, I wanted her to be super weird. There were a bunch of things I could have done to kind of like make the manta ray silhouette, like having it come out of her back, be a part of the tail, but then I decided, let's try doing it with the hair. And I made her look very alien in appearance because I wanted her to be like super aquatic and weird, and I actually really love the result. I dressed her like a kite though, because they're kind of like the airplanes of the seas. So instead of having a military or naval uniform the same way that Remoraid would, I gave her a paper dress with like a wax seal-ish obi, some red details here and there, draped pieces of paper-like fabric everywhere, and especially hanging off her back, because the main thing I wanted was her to resemble a kite. It's an insane design. Thank you! And yeah, so this one was like a huge issue of scale. I think that's about as big as I can make a Musu before it starts like being aggravating. But I definitely wanted her to be large and very nurturing, very mommy. For someone who's like a fighter jet in a way, carrier airplanes, they're super sweet. They're technically not affiliated with the military. They just carry Remoraid around because they like it. They like to be useful. I do have a human for scale there to show you kind of like how big Mantine actually is. Skarmory, this one was actually very challenging because of how the fucking bird is. A fucking butt plug with wings, I shit you not. I do like the design for like a steel bird. I think it's very creative because it looks like origami. So with that in mind and those challenges, let me show you guys what I made. This is my Skarmory. So the main thing I wanted with Skarmory was I wanted them to kind of like keep that really weird face, and I really needed the wings to stand out. So I made it so they paint patterns onto their wings in similar colors, so when they fly through the air, people can tell what their deal is. No kimono for this one. Instead, I decided to go with like a bodysuit with a really big obi and a lot of gold detailing. I did add some leather armor to one side of their body, because most of their body is coated in metal, so it kind of makes no sense to give them full armor, you know? But for the most part, I just needed them to look aerodynamic more than anything else. This one was very fun to make and to dress, because when I came to making the outfit, I just wanted to make something that was like a bit more unusual than your run-of-the-mill kimono. I think that for me, the focal point of the design had to be the wings. That's why I gave them really cool patterns. And I did manage to keep like the really, really weird face while still giving it hair and still making it look cool. I made it so it's actually fused to their skulls, but there's hair coming out the back that they can use to tie up and go into a ponytail. Yeah, like when they tuck their wings in, it does look like a kimono. That's kind of like the magic of it, you know? Kind of looks like fans. That's the point. I was reminded of like Kitana from Mortal Kombat, who uses fans with blades in them, and I was like, okay, I want to do something like that, but let's make it the wings. Here's actually the concept art for Skarmory, so you guys can see what her hair looks like from the back. Oh, I did insult this. Oh, whoops. Sometimes, don't read my notes! Don't read my notes! Sometimes I roast them a little bit. Houndour! Okay, puppy. Not nice puppy. Very cute puppy, but not nice puppy. These were really fun to work with until I thought like, oh god, wait, what are those protrusions? Is that bone? but they were very cute, so I immediately knew I wanted to make like a baddie. So I want to show you guys what I made. This is my Houndour. So the fun thing about Houndour was that similar to Cubone with osteomancy, so bone magic, I made it so that they can grow those bone-like protrusions themselves. They're a part of their bodies, and they use them to basically decorate themselves, right? So they're kind of like fucked up tattoos. And when it came to making their design, I wanted bones to be a present element everywhere. I definitely knew I wanted to work with red because there's like some really nice warm undertones in the actual Pokemon. And I wanted chains, right? Because I wanted these to be like delinquents, like criminals. Chains that they broke out of. Very wild, very intense, spiky hair. But like, they still look cute. And that was like the challenge, right? To like keep it looking adorable while preserving that like fucked up element of the bones. You made the puppy a bad bitch! I did, and that was the point. The point is like to make Houndour an actual baddie, right? Because they are. They're not nice, but they tend to be more criminals than anything else. Is this an I can fix her type of deal? No. Then we have Houndoom, which is a very, very fun Pokemon. Doberman with bones instead of ears, and like a little face on its chest. A ton of bone protrusions, and the tail just became Devil Tail. A very fun design, for sure. And I actually had a really great time making the Musu. Let me show you. Houndoom, I needed to elevate their delinquency up to like actual boss bitch, like actual mobster types of vibes. I went with a very elaborate kimono. I kept the bone patterns, but I added thorns. I made the design way brighter, and instead of making it like a very demure and conservative outfit, I left it open. Also gave a lot of decoration to the horns in the way of chains, makeup. I still kept all the bone protrusions. They still have the bone protrusions, but they are a little bit more subtle about them. They usually have only like a big protrusion on their back, and that's it. It actually acts as a tie for their obi. I don't know if you guys can see that back there. I made it fur-lined, similar to Ampharo's, but not nearly as aristocratic, more wild.
I give tribute for my all-time favorite Pokemon.
They're dangerous! Yeah, you should not want to fix her. Kingdra! Now, these are really fun because this is basically a dragon type, if I'm not mistaken. This is the evolution of Seadra, yes? And these have a unique design challenge of no arms! I actually did have to fuck with that when I was working with the initial, with Horsey evolution line. But I was like, you know what? I did it once, I can do it again, so I made this. I didn't want to make them just like nubbins. I did decide to give them some form of arms, but I made them fins. So they're not actually hands. They can just use those to get around the water. They're pretty powerful as far as Musu go. They are dragon types. And this is another one where the outfit is half Japanese, half vaguely Asian, because I wanted it to be very flowy and very like billowing and something that would look really pretty underwater, you know? The mouth being a horn is very smart. I had to because I tried and I was like, you know, it would not have worked. I went with the actual shape of the Kingdra being mostly on its head, with the fins being the ears, and keeping like the horn silhouette very, very crisp and clear so people could see it's still Kingdra, but I'm not gonna do the snoot for the mouth. Definitely was not gonna work. Accent colors were black and white, which looked pretty cool. And I mainly kept the kimono pink as a point of high contrast with like the very, very blue skin, because any other color would have not looked right. Kingdra was difficult to conceptualize because of the no arm things, but the outfit was trickier because I needed something that would look very grand. It couldn't just be like any other Seadra or Horsey. It had to be fancier because this is a dragon type. They are rare. So they have more ornamental jewelry. They have a lot more dingly-dangly bits. Their sleeves are bigger. Everything's more billowy. It's more ornamented. It's more accentuated. It has some Western concessions like ruffles, but for the most part, Kingdra just needed to look mystical, like a mystical water dragon. Fanfy! Isn't it cute? I love Fanfys. They're like the cutest thing on the planet. Super cute little baby elephants. And I knew that I wanted to do something really cute with them. This is my Fanfy. So my Fanfy are essentially like WWE wrestlers of ancient Japan. This is a thing, by the way. I actually took modern inspiration from this, from like actual Japanese girly pop wrestlers. So I wanted to make an outfit that was gaudy, garish, bright, form-fitting, and fit for the ring, baby! Because Fanfy's whole thing is actually rollout fights, and they take them super seriously. Biology-wise, she was not at all hard to make. I made the hair her ears and her trunk, so it does cover part of their faces. I had a lot of fun with the makeup too. This is one of those outfits that I immediately knew I wanted a shit ton of color, but I had to balance it really well. So the motif for this one was rainbow, but every single fanfy has a different stage outfit. You could say that each of these designs, minus legendaries, are some form of generic. There are fanfies in every shape and size, and each one of the fanfies that fights has a different vibe. But they are mostly wrestlers, and they love to do this. They use it to solve any and all disputes that they run into. They're super fucking cute, and they detest being dirty. Donphan is one of my favorite type of evolutions because it's just this, but bigger. They're way sturdier, way chunkier, way bigger tusks, bigger bodies, rotund, and bigger trunks. So Donphan, let me show you what I did. I decided to go in a bit of a different direction while still maintaining the fanfy spirit. So Donphan actually required a decent chunk of research to get into because I wanted to make sumo. But fun fact, female sumo wrestling is not a thing. There are women who practice the sport, but it's not officially recognized by Japan as an official sport the way that normal sumo wrestling is. I was not gonna let that stop me, however, for designing something sumo-tastic. The reason I wanted to make it sumo as opposed to continuing with the wrestler theme is that Donphan do not fight often. For them, it's a ceremonial thing. It's something that they do with great care and only with opponents that they think would work with them. Biology-wise, you will notice they still have the trunk on the front of their face, but I added the tusks coming out of their foreheads, so they kind of look like demons almost. They're very thick, they're very strong, they have a very muscular build, massive bags, and a lot of makeup. I didn't want them to wear a lot of clothes because sumo wrestlers don't wear a lot of clothes, so this outfit is actually the ceremonial outfit that some sumo wrestlers wear. Not all of them, only the ones that have really high rank and status get to wear fits like this. It's a very much fancier vibe, and it's just one big obi. So they don't really wear a lot of clothing. So immediately when I saw those, I was like, I want Donphan to have a similar vibe. And since the actual belt covers most of the chest, it only needed a very mild Sadashi wrap. But just with that, it felt a little bit like it was missing something. And I actually took inspiration from E Honda from Street Fighter, that some wrestlers do actually use very heavy makeup. Maybe not in sumo, but in performance and theater they do. So I decided to kind of marry the two concepts and give Donphan makeup on her arms and on her face that would kind of help tie the entire look together and make it like one big cohesive sumo-tastic elephant waifu. They're really big and they don't fight often, so for them it's a production. I'm so happy that I managed to land such a strong concept for her, because when it came to making Japanese things, I wanted a little bit of everything, so I jumped at the chance to kind of like embrace any research I can do into the art of sumo to actually make this one. Porygon 2, this is one of the ones where it's similar to Cleffa, that they don't particularly fit the aesthetic of the gen, but I don't mind it. They're basically Porygon that actually learned how to use more 3D mesh. And they're shiny and they're very funny. They look like rubber duckies. Let me show you guys what I made with it though. So Porygon 2, people are gonna be like, what, Lily, what happened to Japan? Let me get to that. So with Porygon, the OG, they were like ancient beings that could not interact with the world unless they made constructs for themselves. And the Gen 1 one looks a lot more ancient and like Aztec than this one, but for this one, I went a little bit more modern with the outfit because they are a little bit more modern themselves. I made them a plug suit. I did want to reference at least one Japanese something, so I made them plug suits. They cannot interact with the world without this coating on their skin, and they usually ride these little things that they're on. That's the thing that helped me complete the silhouette. I was like, okay, I can't make it traditionally Japanese, but I can reference Japan somewhere, so I did. Stantler! Oh my god, this thing is so fugly! Stantler was one of the ones that, like, I think everybody told me, I can't believe you made this thing cute. Because, look at it. It's an Uggo that looks like it ate a bee. I didn't bully them. I made the cutest thing ever. Look, look, look.
Moving right along. Footloose and fancy free.
Don't mock my child. I will mock your child. So I wanted to make like forest mystics when it came to Stantler. So I used the antlers as actual decorative elements in the actual outfit. And I gave them really, really long sleeves, a lot of very drapey fabrics. And I actually used the antlers are kind of like anchors for amulets, right? So these are kind of like not quite shrine maidens, more mystics. They make illusions to keep people out of their forests. They're kind of like hermits. I kept the expression because it's a fucking deer. Had to be a centaur. The silhouette demanded that it be a centaur. I did not mind making it a centaur, but I actually decided to have more fun with the outfit to give it some crazy pattern that resembled the antlers. I gave them a lot of beads. I gave them just like hanging bits and bobs everywhere. And I also managed to keep the shape of the face by using the hair, so I didn't have to give them like cheeks that hung down to their butts. Fun fact, they are considered messengers from the gods in Shinto. That's what I tried to do! See, I really love it when people kind of get where my research was taking me with the Musu, because I do look into all of it when I'm making the designs for this. Smeargle, this one was very fun. I've always liked Smeargle because like it's just a dopey dog that paints with like their own fluids. Don't ask where they get the colors from, chat. It's weird, okay? But they're super cute. Very humanoid, which actually made my job fairly easy. So when it came to designing for Smeargle, I definitely did not want to go with like a traditional kimono for them, but I also didn't want to just make like a full-on craftsman outfit. I wanted something a bit cuter, right? So I decided to go for like a mix between something that was very girly pop but still has the more craftsman silhouette. Because fun fact, a lot of craftspeople in ancient Japan were dudes. So most of the outfits I got for inspiration for this one were very masculine in silhouette, but I did not let that deter me and instead decided to design my own uniform for Smeargle using the very like wide shoulders of the craftsman outfits, but like giving it a tighter skirt and very, very much flared out at the bottom to kind of like connect that composition and make it just look super cool. I gave them brush patterns everywhere, in the obi, on the fabric, even on like the dangly bits on the back of the coat. They are painters for people. Nobles usually have them in their employment because they just make beautiful art. And the color of their not paint depends on their mood. I went with green because that's the one that's basic, and I actually contrasted it. I didn't want to make the outfit super neat either because they're artists. If you've ever met an artist anywhere that does any painting, they have like their painting fit because it will absolutely get destroyed by paint. So Smeargle are the same way. I really like what I did with it though, because I managed to make like a very craftsmanship looking outfit while still keeping some fantasy flair to it. And the brush patterns everywhere definitely were very fun to come up with. Brush patterns like the jade elements on it as well. And they always have like parchment on them. They draw a lot. They do have that stupid horn. I didn't want to just make that a hat. How soft is the tail, Lily? Very soft, but it's usually coated in their knot paint. Tyrogue! I actually call this one Tyrone. This is one of those Mons that I saw and I was like, you're basically human, so I don't have a ton to do here, but fuck it, let's try. So this is Tyrogue. So these are basically martial arts students, but don't let that make you think that they're amateurs. I wanted to give them like the look of someone with not a ton of experience, but still knew what they were doing. A lot of hair, because I wanted to actually offset the 3 horns on the forehead. I really decided to make really cool hair for this. And there was a struggle of, do I let them have full human hands or do I keep the 3 fingers? And at the end of the day, rules of the design project, the more iconic an element, the more present it has to be. Since Tyrogue has such a simple design, I decided to keep the 3 fingers and just put a lot more oomph into the face and the 3 horns. So outfit-wise, I kept Tyrogue's color scheme. Since I wasn't gonna make them stupid booty shorts, I needed them to still fit in within the Johto aesthetic. So their outfit is just basically a more chill version of like Aikido, I think? I did look into Japanese martial arts for designing for this, but I didn't want to just use the traditional Aikido colors because it's like white and really dark blue. I wanted to actually use Pokemon's color scheme for this. It's a very, very simple fit. And the metal in the middle of their belt, fun fact, is a fist. Hitmontop, I thought this one was gonna give me a lot of trouble because look at it, but it's so fucking cute. It's genuinely funny, it's always on its head. I always found it to be very charming. And And when I was designing the actual Musu, I let my mind wander to animation. The challenge with Hitmontop was genuinely capturing the motion of the Musu. So most of the work with Hitmontop was in posing, believe it or not. When I was doing the design, I basically drew her upside down, right side up, and I wanted to see if I was going to animate this, how would I do it? So I basically put a lot of thought into the flow of this design because I knew that the movement had to be the most important thing. It is one of the most like Disgaea inspired designs I have in this gen because everything about it had to basically work, so if it spun, it would give it a shit ton of motion. I gave it really, really big spiky bracelets on ankles and wrists. It has literally fucking cone hair. It also has a really, really big spiky collar and those prayer beads that you can use to like really focus. And the actual like centerpiece of this is, I did let them keep their patterns too, by the way. They're just like splotches of like blue skin. The big centerpiece of this outfit comes with the belt. So this belt is basically made with two dangly bits at the ends that kind of resemble the Musu's tail. So when it actually stands on one hand to spin and kick, the outfit also has offensive capabilities. They don't have kimonos, they have like a shirt and pants and like bandages on the feet. Because again, the main challenge for this one was action in motion, motion in 2D. And it was genuinely such a good time to break this down to a way that if I put this into my animating software, I would know how to animate it. Now we have Smoochum. This is one of the pre-evolutions that was definitely conceptually one of the hardest ones to work with. It's very, very cute. It just gives kisses, and apparently it can't really interact with anything unless it puts its lips on it. So with that, I made this unhinged thing to be one of the more interesting and kind of horrifying concepts in the entirety of Gen 2. So my Smoochum is something akin to a forest spirit, right? I believe that those are called kodamas. They're like little forest spirits, like the ones that you see in Princess Mononoke. They cannot interact with anything unless they touch it, especially with their lips. And the cool thing about this is that since these are spirits, they don't have a lot of human interaction. I didn't really want to dress them. I basically wanted to dress them like they're wearing foliage from sacred trees. And the lore I came up with for the patterns for them was that if they come into contact with a human being, they will want to become human. So they will start to absorb shadows from everywhere around them to give themselves form and sensation, bit by bit. And once their entire body is covered in shadows, which destroys the ecosystem, they become a Jinx. That's their ardent shift. So I actually tied the evolution into the writing and design for Smoochum to make it work with a way that you can have this Pokemusu that it's very cutesy looking but can't interact with anything unless they kiss it, so they're like forest spirits. And once they actually feel that desire to become human, you can tell that they have the same segmented body as Jinx does. They absorb shadow to become Jinx. So they don't really need a lot of clothes because they don't really interact with many things. People consider them creepy, and they are creepy, so they usually keep their distance, but they're harmless. Elekid! It's an egg. You know how you tell kids not to fucking stick forks into electrical sockets? Elekid are the fork into the electrical socket, okay? They want juice, they crave juice, they are an egg that desires electricity. Let me show you guys what I made with them. These are the Electabuzz pre-evos. So for Elekid, I categorize these as like the Oni type of Musus. So they look very wild. The main thing I wanted was to kind of capture a manic spirit of someone who would like, that stick on her back, that's not a weapon, that's a lightning rod. They like to go out and get struck by lightning because they're dipshits. So I went with a very simple outfit that had very spiky fur to like look like it was shocked by electricity, but also very Oni-like. I kept the color scheme pretty muted because they actually are very, very bright. So I think that if the outfit was bright also, she would get so washed out. Really big hands because they have really, really big arms. They do still have the patterns, by the way, and just like a very simple outfit of like a blue bodysuit with like the arm and leg pieces, and that's it. Sniffa! Grippers out! and just the horns and just very wild hair. And the hair gives me that, like, that egg shape that I wanted. But the main thing I needed to capture was, like, the manic energy, you know? Then we have Magby, the booby. They're called booby in Japanese. Little baby lava duck. So I wanted to make something really like cute with them, but I also wanted to make something unique. Magmar in Gen 1 has like a very traditional fantasy outfit, but I wanted this to be a lot more Japanese adjacent, so this is what I did. Another one that goes into the Oni category, I basically wanted to dress them in engraved metal. You know how in Kung Fu Panda, in the second movie, the bullets that were like fired from the cannons, from like the big guns, had these like little delicate engraving on them on the metal? That's basically what I wanted to do for her outfit, because Magbies, much like Magmar, hang out near and in lava a lot. So they like heat, so they need clothing that won't just melt off. So when I was designing the outfit, I was like, I want something that could still be very much Japanese, very much Oriental, but I don't want to make a kimono because it would just melt off. So I took inspiration from a lot of Chinese and Japanese metalwork to make a kind of like armored bodysuit that they could wear in lava. Yes, also feet. Designing the outfit took me like 40 minutes. And then actually implementing it, it was like an hour, because I had to like make sure that I got every single little baby carving right. Because I wanted them to look like billowing smoke clouds that would come out of a volcano while still very much maintaining that like metalwork flair. So yeah, it took a bit to draw, but I definitely loved what I came up with. Her hair, she has it tied back in like a little rat tail that ends in a poof. But again, like, this is like a generic Magby. Magby can have any hairstyle that you could possibly want. This is just like what I would design like a normal Magby to be like, if that makes sense. Like your stereotypical Magby. Now then, this is probably the most requested bumblefuck in the entirety of this gen.
Now let's see what we got in the dairy section. No, not the dairy section.
The amount of people coming into my fucking comments and DMs like, where Miltank? I was like, be patient, children. I like Miltank. I think that it's such a cute Pokemon. It's a fucking menace when Whitney uses it, but I fucking beat it. And it's super cute. And let me show you the phenomenal thing that I did with this dipshit, because I'm so proud of myself. Where's the Milkies? Big Mama. So with Miltank, their milk, I wanted it to be like a central focus of not just the lore, but the design. The fun part wasn't so much designing the cow. That was easy. I was debating giving it an udder just to fuck with people, but I decided against it because it didn't look good. So big fat bags it is. Yes, you do milk those. So the actual biology of the Musu was really easy. It's a Holstar. It's just like a cow woman. The tricky part for Miltank was the outfit. Because I could not just have her dressed in any old farmer's kimono. No. They are idols. They are community mothers. They are revealed because their milk is healing. It's magic. So these bitches are dressed to the nines. Their milk is dead ass like an Elden Ring fucking flask, okay? Any injury you have, healed. So they are famous, all right? Every region has their Miltank and they will do anything and everything to keep them happy. Their outfit, I had a lot of fun because I wanted to make like the big overcoat with like the fur, but I also wanted to add a lot of milk patterns everywhere. I was not able to give the actual Musu udders. I put udders in different places. So I put an udder in her hairdress, I put an udder in her obi, I put udder little patterns on her ankle bracelets. The actual kimono has a lot of flowiness and peonies and very pretty feminine, like flowers, because like again, mother. And the color scheme for this had to stay super soft and super nice. And they're also wearing a veil. So it's not just that they have like their big kimono and that's it, because that would resemble Anfero's. And I was like, okay, I need something more. I also gave them a big veil on the back that also has the milky patterns. That face is making me feel. They're very nurturing. A happy Miltank is a protected village, protected warriors, well nurtured and well fed, and they make a lot of milk. Idol culture in Johto literally revolves around Miltank. Like they will like put up statues and praise them and bring them food, and they genuinely love their communities. Because the better you treat a Miltank, the better quality of milk you get. And they're not at all bratty or divas or anything. They're genuinely incredibly kind-natured Musu, so they love people and they love taking care of people. Blissey. Now, Blissey was the last design that I actually unveiled publicly with Gen 2 when I made the decision to make this video. Blissey is a big egg. Big egg that's carrying an egg. That's it. Anything else, feathery. But their lore gets kind of dark, fun fact. So let me show you guys what I did with this because I'm so proud of it. So my Blissey, I actually based the actual outfit off all Japanese nurses, especially war nurses, they used to wear black. So this is actually a real fit that you can find in history. However, I made some concessions for the Japanese theme. Let me zoom in. I gave her an actual like detachable jacket. I did keep the traditional Japanese hat, but I wanted her shoulders to be exposed because of her feathers, right? And they always do have their egg. The reason the Dex lore is kind of dark is because Blissey eggs can make you happy. Which by that metric means that Blissey eggs can force you to be happy. And a lot of Blissey know this, and you don't see Blissey very often, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories in Johto that the government feeds people Blissey eggs in their food and shit to just keep them placated. Like, I had a moment of like, oh god, when I realized that Blissey eggs could make people artificially happy. So I, being a dipshit, decided to lean into the dark side of the lore for this. And that's why it's the black nurse's uniform. They are healers, they do heal, but you don't see them often, and their eggs in the wrong hands can cause mayhem. It is literally egg drugs, but that's why the outfit is so dark. I also wanted them to look a little bit sad. They're putting eggs in the water to turn the Pollywogs gay.
I wanna take you to a cave.
You literally referenced that. What the fuck kind of mooses believe in conspiracy theories? A lot of them.
Now offer you a nice egg.
But yeah, if you look at their faces, they're not happy. Like, they smile, but their smile rarely reaches their eyes. They know that their eggs can do this. They're well aware, and they don't like it. We're getting into the new shits. These are the designs that none of you guys have seen. Starting with the dogs! They're technically supposed to be lions, but whatever. We begin with the legendaries. Now, Raikou is, you know, the look on my face when I tried to catch one of these and it fell asleep and it just kept on running. Jesus Christ. This is the Thunder Dog. My favorite one out of the dogs. I like it the best. I think it has like the most bomb.com design. And when it came time to actually make the designs for the Musu, I had to basically really think about Raikou because this was gonna be the basis for all 3 of the dogs. So let me show you what I made for the very first legendary in Gen 2. Drum roll, please. Attaboy, thank you for the bongos. This is Raikou. I'm gonna give you guys a minute to take the design in because you guys have never seen this before. But when it comes to designing legendaries, that is where my chops as a character designer really need to come out because legendaries are 1 Musu per gen. These are not characters that could be considered NPCs. No. These are actual characters. These needed so much design. They literally take almost twice as long as any other Musu. So with Raikou, I decided to embrace the Thunder God. And I gave them the big halo with the drums and drumsticks that they bang. They control storms, and everywhere on their armor, there is storm clouds and lightning motifs. I didn't want to give them kimonos despite the fact that they were gods because they're very active presences, right? These are almost warriors in a sense. Like, they walk the earth and storms are fucking summoned in their might. It was one of the most cool designs that I came up with this gen, and when I was conceptualizing it, I immediately knew they needed to be centaurs. Because I tried making them bipedal, it did not hit that hard. They did not feel like fucking gods. She turned out amazing, and I had so much fun with the colors, the shapes, the concept work, the research for this mon, because it was a labor of love to even construct the armor for this. It has a very strong concept. And then I also decided to give the mask very long tassels with like lightning at the end, similar to the tail. So it would have a very nice sense of flow even with the drum halo. That actually is a halo, by the way. That's not part of the outfit, that's part of the biology. And the actual dog body was really easy to make because the bulk of the work was in the actual torso and the hair. The hair, the way that Raikou, the Pokemon, is designed was super easy for me to work with because all I had to do was marry that white and like lavender to make it look like her actual hairstyle. And they are wild and dangerous gods, and these were all brought back to life by Hole, so they serve Hole directly. These are like her disciples, so in a way. In the actual games, they were resurrected because they were trying to save people from that burning tower that got struck by lightning. So Raikou is the Pokemon that got struck by lightning. And this is only the first of the dogs. It's gonna get wilder, so let me show you. Entei was fun, but very challenging because Entei is essentially a volcano that looks like an old man. Entei was definitely tricky, but after about 2 hours of making different concepts, sketching different faces, trying out different things, I managed to come up with something that I believe greatly fit what I wanted to do for this legendary. Entei is the second Musu revived by Hole. They are representing the element of the fire in the tower.
Due to the movie, I can't not see Entei as a dad.
She's your father now. That's your daddy. I wanted to really like capture the volcanic element that the Pokemon had, so I thought one of my favorite type of deity of god is Blacksmith God. So she's a weird mix between a volcano god and Hephaestus. She makes weapons. So she has a smith's hammer, and she also has a really long flat sword that she can also use to weld. The trickiest part of Entei was getting her face right, because these fucking scales, getting a good design for these took me 2 hours. And they have different colors too, so they were very, very tricky to work with. Yeah, Aura were inspirations, but believe it or not, you know what else inspired me for this? Monster Hunter. Monhun was a great source of reference material for this, to the point that I actually sent, I think, Spanish the sketch for this, and he was like, are you making a raid out monster girl? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's go with that. You tricked me. I did. I'm sorry. I need to see if it would work. I also, since it's a blacksmith, I wanted to not dress her. Like, while she does have kimono that is draped across her back, I thought that this design would work a lot better if she was booby out, and I was right. Entei, much like Raikou, has armor on the dog legs, but she doesn't have any armor on top because she doesn't need it. She's a blacksmith. So I gave her the big smithing glove, the hammer.
She's Jimmy's patron Musu.
Deadass. Deadass. Monhunt was so helpful in making this design, you guys have no idea. Fire elements everywhere, pattern in the kimono, but these are already so ornamented that I felt like giving it a lot of clothing would destroy the design. So I had to keep the elements simple, fiery, beautiful, while still very much paying attention to the fur on its back, the spikes on its back. I wanted to give it a halo as well because I thought that would look more like a god. And all in all, I think that I managed to both respect the silhouette and build on the concept in my own way. Then we have Water Dog. What the fuck is that? How do I pronounce this? Suicune? Yeah, Suicune, I was very surprised when I found out that this was not an ice type. This is a water type. It looks like an ice type, but it's a water type because it's the rain that like put out the fire in the tower. This is the most graceful out of the 3 dogs. I think it's more slender, less stocky, very, very pretty, very flowy. So when designing the Musu, I had to take that into account. Let me show you how we bless the rains down in Johto. This is my take on Suicune. Drink it in. I wanted her to be a musician. I wanted her to have like her own like big shamisen, the Japanese instrument. But I didn't want to just give her any old shamisen. I had to actually give the shamisen design when I was making it. So I used elements from like the actual Pokemon to do it, to give it some flow. She also has a halo because I think that every dog needed a halo. It's just kind of hidden in her hair. She's very elegant, very poised. And most of the time she's seen with the shamisen. She, unlike Raikou, who is like the bringer of thunderstorms, and Entei, who is a blacksmith, Suicune is more peaceful. She's a musician. So she like governs water, governs rain. And the most important thing about making her outfit was giving it like a really nice sense of flow. It needed to feel like the ripples in a pond in a way when I was designing the whole vibe for her. She was actually one of the trickiest ones to make clothing for and to actually get the vibe right because she has like such a big headpiece element that designing a halo for her took a hot minute, but I really like what I came up with. So Berserker, the Blacksmith, and the Bard. Yeah, they're a pretty interesting trio, and the most graceful one out of all of them is this one. Are all three of them sisters? Just curious. I actually don't know if I made them sisters or not, because I don't know if they're sisters or not in the game. So we'll keep that ambiguous for now. And again, another thing I wanted was I wanted a predominantly very cold color scheme, but I needed the shamisen to stand out. So I made that one a more warm tone, made out of like very warm wood. And a lot of flow, a lot of sashes that kind of match with her tail. Like everything kind of like fits together pretty well with Suicune, because again, the dog bodies already have a lot of detail, so the outfits don't need to stand out that much. Like the dog can stand on its own without me doing a ton of work for it. So at the end of the day, I think the important part was to capture the vibe, and the vibe for this one was serenity and tranquility. Now, we start with Larvitar. Okay, so remember when I said earlier that there were two symbols, one for Lugia, one... I lied, there's actually three. Tyranitar is the third symbol, but we start with Larvitar, and I will explain a little bit more about why they have their own symbol later. First of all, look at this, it's angry and Whittle. Let me show you the Musu. Larvitar are kind of like the Earthquake Musu in a way. They are not nice, they've never been nice, and this is how they start out with. So I wanted something very like... mythical Oni, covers themselves in stone. They're usually underground. I wanted them to look and feel unhinged. They're not super sane. They're actually pretty rare. You don't see them at all. They were exiled by Mommy Lugia, and they basically kind of like stay in their own devices. The reason they got exiled will be revealed later, but these Musu are basically very, very mad. When it came to making the design, I didn't want to dress them much. I gave them some rock bikini, almost as if they were starting to become Pupitar. And I also gave them pants and just a very simple sash. And I wanted everything to be like caked and covered with dirt and patterned with dirt, because they're always underground. So all of their jewelry, all of their accessories, all of their armor is made out of stone, to the point that the Musu itself looks crackled. And they have like a little tail on the back as well. So similar to Steelix and Onix, they have like crackled skin. But unlike Steelix and Onix, they're not chill at all. Don't they eat soil? Yeah, they eat soil in normal Pokemon, but that was kind of lame. I wasn't just gonna make them like dirt, like, so it's better, it sounds cooler if they're absorbing energy and magic from the ground. Pupitar. Now, Pupitar was tricky, because as you guys can see, it's a nugget, and I hate nuggets. They're so tricky to work with. But reading at the fucking Pokedex entries a little bit and using some creative thinking, I managed to come up with a really interesting concept. The jet-powered nugget, yes. This is my Pupitar. So for Pupitar, I actually took some inspiration from Bayonetta from Jubileus, which is kind of like a big statue come to life. So you guys are seeing the front of the Musu, but behind that, there's an actual cocoon. The Larvitar is in there and they're changing, and they are mad. So when I came to making the design, no clothes were necessary. But what I did want to add was a lot of ornamentation. So I made the rocks have specific, very like divine-ish patterns, like a lot of swirls, almost cloud-like designs, almost scaled, very crackly. I wanted their face to have like a shit ton of design as well. So I made a lot of details in the actual mask portion. But like basically, it's kind of like the thing that they put on pirate ships, like the mermaid. Like the statue's on the front and in the back is the cocoon, the Musu is in there. Gotta use a big cracker for this one. Please don't, they would die. But it might be good if they stay dead, because we're moving on to the big boys. Tyranitar, also known as basically Baby Godzilla. So this one, well, the design makes me laugh because that expression is hella dopey. The Dex entry gave me a lot to work with. Let's bring it back to that like third symbol I was talking about, because the actual Musu for Tyranitar is the final form of the Pupitar line, and they are not nice. This is a kaiju, yes. This is Tyranitar. Once Tyranitar reaches this form, once they recover their rage, they can level anything. So they are so fucking dangerous that Mama Lugia had to actually step in. These are considered natural disasters. They are considered unfortunate omens, mass death events. They're not a Musu to take lightly. And And in knowing that, when it came to the design, I needed a grand fucking disaster.
Smash, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I'm loving the designs for Tyranitar line.
Thank you. I needed them to be big, imposing, villainous, ornamented, absolutely fucking gorgeous. I took inspiration from Azura's Wrath for this because of like the big gold gloves and the big leg pieces and armor on the legs. I wanted them to basically be consumed by rage and ready to destroy everything. These things hate Lugia with a burning fucking passion, okay? Lore-wise, these were the old rulers of the Johto region, and they destroyed everything until the legendary burbs came in and basically fucking spiked them into the ground. I made them keep some almost Pupitar elements, like the tail is like a broken off part of the cocoon. The gloves have like the Pupitar designs as well.
I could see it be a thing if signs of Larvitar are around and then stop. There's a race to find and smash the Pupitar before this happens.
Yeah, and that's usually Lugia's and her guard's job. But yeah, they're very angry. They're not at all common. You do not see these at all. And the fun fact about their design was to basically make a big angry mama. I wanted super wild hair, super spiky body segments. She looks like she's the closest thing to a demon lord in the Musuverse. She would probably be the final boss. This and Mewtwo could be considered the demon lords of the Musuverse, with Mewtwo being the one for Kanto, yes. There is technically an antagonist in each gen. It's just that as I experience the new ones, I'm gonna have to come up with them. You did them so much justice, Lee. Thank you. You're welcome! I love hearing the feedback. It makes me so happy. Especially because I hadn't shown you guys these. I was really nervous. One of the bad things about only posting the art is that I never got much feedback. Like, people didn't really say much. They would only really focus on the lewds and not the actual designs. And that's why I was like, okay, well, if I make a video, maybe I'll get a little bit more feedback for the project. This is what I'm using to learn how to design characters better. This is what fueled me to keep making them, basically. So now that we have the Tyranitar line, we can move on to the birds. So now, before we move on to Lugia and Ho, let me explain the factions for Johto, for the Musuverse, all right? So Johto is divided into two factions. The faction of Order, and the faction of what you could consider nature. The faction of Order is the faction with the 3 Pokeballs with a line on top that is Lugia's. So the reason I made 2 factions for Order and for nature is because I wanted to give parallels to the actual nation of Japan. Japan is a nature in which modern life and old tradition are seamlessly mixed, and I wanted to show that with the Pokemusu by giving one of them, Lugia's faction, Order, the Musus that have more modern aesthetics, like the Remoraid, for example, and are usually the ones that kind of like keep things in line. That is the side of Japan that is like super technologically advanced, very neat, very orderly. And then we have the faction of nature, of tradition, that is Ho. Those are the Musu that are more in touch with the land, with mysticism, and that is the part of Japan where like tradition meets modernity, and you can find some beautiful and mystic and absolutely enthralling spaces in nature in the nation of Japan. So I wanted to basically use these parallels from the actual country that inspired this region, at least in terms of making the designs, to make the Musu. So we begin with Order. We begin with Lugia. Now, Lugia presented some unique design challenges, especially because of their wings, which look like really big hands, and because of their size. They're pretty big. Like, when I was making them, I actually did put the trainer in for scale in the actual Dex entry. I don't know if I think I just used the normal sprite for this, but I do have, like, for scale, they're really big. They're like Mantine sized in height, okay? The main thing to do with her was it gonna be a Harpy, or was it gonna be something similar to like what Fallon is as a monster in Dungeon Meshi? And after some back and forth, a lot of concept art, and a lot of thinking, I did end up going for something akin to a Harpy. Now, when it came to actually designing for her, I wanted something that was more modern than your traditional kimono, definitely. She is the commander-in-chief. She is the supreme ruler of Johto. She has like a more active role, but she used to. She sealed herself away because her power is so great that she's afraid she's going to wreck everything. She's very tall. The trainer only reaches to about her knee. And the design process for this was making a naval uniform that had a bit of a grander flair. I didn't want to make her look like a queen because that would not at all fit the vibe I wanted for her. I wanted her to be more of a commander-in-chief, general, and be something that would be big, imposing, but serene. I did add the tidal bell and the silver feather. Yes, those are all present because I wanted to have like the things from the game present in the actual Pokemon's design. It's a mainly very cool toned outfit because her whole thing is cold. But let me show you guys the scale. This is the original artwork, the actual sketch for Lugia with the trainer for scale. The trainer will be there in the Pokédex entry, but for purposes of showing off the Musu's design, he will not be present in the videos. The thing is that she was meant to be imposing and a general, absolute leader. She has a katana that I don't know how the fuck she would use because Harpy. But the main thing is that she is the supreme ruler. She basically controls everything to do with the government and the nation. She is the modern and government side of Johto. She basically made the government, she set up everything, and then she left because she has so much power that she's genuinely terrified she will destroy it. Unlike Tyranitar, who are very, very angry and want to essentially wreck everything, Lugia has a little bit more self-control, and she knows that she could be a danger to others if she is not properly secluded. And absolutely one of the most fun I had with the legendaries with this gen. The second faction of Johto is the faction of tradition, of nature, of life. This would be Ho. Let me tell you something, chat. I hate this bird. I hate this bird because it has the most garish color scheme in the history of the universe. It's supposed to be rainbow feathered. What is that? This disgusting. So I had my work cut out for this. The thing about Ho, which I love the design for, is I like the shape for it because it's like a very grand phoenix. It's basically a phoenix, it's basically a bird. But when it came to designing the Musu, I was like, oh boy, here we go. So give me a fucking drum roll because I outdid myself. Ho, unlike Lugia, is considered more of a god. She is actively around, but she doesn't appear often. She's also very big, although a bit smaller than Lugia. I wanted to dress her like an empress. So off I went to Google search what the royal family of Japan, particularly princesses and empresses, actually wear for public events. And let me tell you, there's a lot of fabric. And there is also a specific pattern that's tied to the royal family. So I covered Ho's outer robe in her actual symbol. So Ho represents nature, life, death and rebirth, life in general. She's a phoenix, she's a firebird, she can bring people back to life. So I wanted her to basically resemble something akin to Amaterasu, while at the same time being like an empress. Well, at the same time, I wanted the feet to be visible because she carries around a spear of light. She forged this with her own fire, and it's pretty fucking powerful. This is the final sketch before I started lining and coloring Ho. And you can see how big she is compared to our trainer slash scholar baby boy, and how her outfit is actually constructed, which is layers upon layers of fabric, patterns, fucking makeup, hair accessories, the rainbow sash. I put so much care and love into making this outfit because she has one of the fucking most difficult color schemes to work with, mama. She has red, she has green, and she has white and gold, and it's like, holy shit.
It's Mexican flag drawn when drunk.
Jesus Christ, it is. So I was like, I don't want to make something that looks like a piñata. That was the challenge, and it turned out so fucking cool. And she looked so majestic and so rainbowy and so bright and beautiful. And her thing is that she's the firebird. She can bring people back to life. The dogs are like her loyal disciples. And while she's not easy to talk to, she's not like Lugia. I don't think she sealed herself away. She's just like Rainbow Bird. She's not an active fighter though. She's more of like a god than anything else. And she represents the more traditional and mystical and nature side of Johto and of Japan.
How do Pokeballs work in this world?
They don't have any.
Do they work the same in the game?
No.
Are they more of a contract thing?
There are no contracts because it would get really close to slavery, and I thought that would be really weird. So there's no Pokeballs, there's no capturing, no nothing. You meet a Musu, you fall in love with a Musu, or you become friends with a Musu. And we have one more, which had her own set of challenges. Welcome, Onion. Celebi was making me and Wilson sweat bullets, okay? This thing is an onion, right? It's like a fairy. It's really cute. It's a little fairy thing. Isn't it adorable, right? It's a time traveler! Time travel is one of the hardest things to write ever. But thankfully, in the fucking game's own lore, Celebi are really passive time travelers. They don't change things. If a timeline is not peaceful, they fuck off. I want you guys to give me a drum roll so I can show you what I did with this onion because she was not easy to design. She had 2 full sets of concept art because I just could not get it, chat. But I did in the end. Meet Celebi. Celebi is actually the most nature-adjacent Musu in this gen. They are time travelers, but they only like to hang out in peaceful timelines. They like music, they follow skilled individuals. They're like that thing in Princess Mononoke that like they touch something and it comes to life. Like they're time, but like they're also very, very passive. Celebi is actually, fun fact, Midna-sized. She is very, very tiny. When it came to designing her, I mainly wanted to focus on like the nature mystical element of her. I gave her a really long robe. I gave her a lot of flowers. You can see that there's actually like a flower's life cycle all around that wreath around her neck. From bud to blossom to back to bud. And her ornaments are not that many, but I mainly want to keep them very naturey. So she has flower buds and plants growing on her person. Some gold details here and there. I actually based the color scheme off the shiny, which is pink. So it would contrast really, really nicely with the green. Yes, there is a hole in the back of the hood. That's where the onion hair is coming out of. And I want to show you guys the sketch so you guys can see how big she is compared to the trainer. She's very, very, very small. She is Midna size. She is a short stack, fairy size. I tried a bunch of things with Celebi. I tried making her with normal human proportions and just really long arms. But at the end of the day, the fairy proportions and size worked a lot better for the final look than having her have normal human proportions and just be like Gallica sized. But yeah, like her thing is though, is if a timeline isn't peaceful, she will fuck off. So she never messes with time. She can time travel, but she won't fuck with it. She gave me a lot of trouble when I was first designing her because of her proportions, but this is what I settled on. Let me show you guys her actual body shape because the outfit hides a lot of it. This is A, scale next to the trainer, and B, that what her body actually looks like underneath the clothing. But yeah, really big arms, really big hips, but she's short. Fun fact, the reason why this trainer has survived fucking all of the assholes in like a few of the lewds that I actually didn't make any for Celebi, but whatever, is because she's broken her rule with him a few times and dragged him out of the claws of death. Because he's very skilled, he's a very skilled person, he's almost like he's a scholar, he's an artist, and Celebi likes people like that. That boy is stupid, deadass. But the design for this one was one of my favorites to do because of all the nature elements I was able to put into it. Like the flowers on her feet, the wreath is my favorite part of this entire design. And I was actually like planning on making this kimono blue, but I like the pink a lot better because A, it's the shiny, and B, it contrasted with the green so nicely. So she has a lot of flip-floppy bits. The hood actually looks like a wedding dress too, like a traditional Japanese wedding dress. And I just gave her like a really nice simple crown. Unlike Ho and Lugia, which have a lot more ornamentation going on, for Celebi, I wanted the vibe to be more chill forest spirit. But yeah, Celebi, I think, was, for the final Musu of the gen, a decent challenge. I think I did really, really well. But I'm not gonna lie to you guys, 2 sets of concept art will do something to you. Closing thoughts. I think that I've learned a shit ton about designing for characters with Gen 2, particularly the Japanese aesthetic. I think at this point, if you ask me to design you a fantasy Japanese character, I will be able to do it without blinking because I've made so many kimonos, like so many, chat. I'm done. I don't want to draw a kimono ever again in my whole entire life, but I have learned so much. I've learned so much about Japanese culture, Japanese aesthetics, the way that like things are set up, and the way that like they embrace nature and whimsy and order. And I think that this has been an incredible 2.5 years to make this gen. And I'm so, so excited to see what other people are going to think about this project and to see what the future brings for Pokemusu, because If this is only Gen 2, there's nowhere to go but up. After 200 characters under my belt, I can confidently say that I'm getting much better at this, and I had such a blast. And if you like this, and if you like this project, and if you like this video, please leave me a comment, let me know, give me feedback. I appreciate it. These are all super fun to make, but I like hearing what people think. Like, comment, subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel, and all that feedback just gets me motivated to keep making more and make them faster because these take a while. Also, go get some G-subs. Just remember to use code KINKIVATION for 10% off.